still very much in the round. Oh, Chris, he's found 3. It's down to a 2-on-2. Chris, can he close this with an ace? Oh my God!
He gives him a chance at least, and this CZ kill could be everything. Finally, Zeus, he does something!
Looking for a second, he connects it. Oh, and he gets a third as well. Surely he's not going to pull this off. Oh, Caldera, the man, the myth, the beast.
Zywoo, no help really, but he's still hitting shots. He's already got 3, 4, and 5. And oh my God, Zywoo! Unbelievable!
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Revenge by the Numbers. It's been another week. And, well, Duncan and I, we got a lot to talk about because Pro League is kicking off this week. We just had a bunch go down last week as well. In terms of the EG Saga, it continues. We're going to be talking a lot about it, amongst other things. But before we get into it, Duncan, how you doing, dude? You had a good week?
You know, one thing that's actually a bit annoying about my career is I'm not actually as cynical. I'm definitely not as much about marketing as a lot of fans think. Like, you know, a lot of people do that thing where they say the same thing about Skip Bayless. Like, you're just like one of those guys where you just cynically construct like totally the opposite take to get views and attention, you know, all that jazz. But what they don't know is if I actually did do that, in theory, I could be way more popular. And one thing I actually, in general, in my career, don't do a very good job with, unfortunately, is because I don't like the idea of having a boss. Part of that's even the idea that people can just like make me do things I'm not into doing right now. So where this is all going is, one thing I'm not actually that good at usually is, even though I do all this like historical content, I'm not that great at tying it to something super topical now. Like every now and then it'll be a happy accident, you know, like I'll want to write about like Nico and then he'll win like kind of each, and then it's like, right, that's obviously perfect time. If you get that piece out, everyone's going to love it. But so normally I actually have zigged and when I should have zagged a million times over. But I actually think I've been handed the greatest gift of all time. Because remember, you might all know I already did my EG CSGO video. I did that actually it was like a month ago or more ago now, and it revealed all I think it was actually maybe it was at the beginning of this month actually. It was
a couple weeks ago. It wasn't that long ago.
Maybe the beginning of this month, I think. Maybe like the first like Monday or whatever. But so obviously I've done most of the stuff. I'm not going to do another one about CSGO. Like obviously, spoiler, the same management's there, still fucking up. But I told people, because of all those mad tweets, I am going to do a video about the GamerDoc individual, the person who's the senior director of performance at Evil Geniuses. Now, I was just going to do it mainly as a comedy video because they said so many silly things on Twitter. Like, it's just one of those ones where, you know, when it's like, say we're Rich with Reddit, me with Twitter, it's like, there's just an easy video to make. You just roast them a bit, you make fun. But what's hilarious now with Semmler is the sheer streak of bad form the team is in is so mental. Like today, if people don't know, just before we recorded, they got eliminated from Pro League and lost to the Eternal Fire team who aren't even good. So like, when I actually do this video, which I'll probably do in the next couple of days, I'm going to be able to show that, like, at the end of the day, look, certainly there can be extenuating circumstances behind the scenes, but at the end of the day, if your job is director of performance, and then when I show you the performance is like win one match ever, like, you're by definition the worst ever at your job. So it's going to be like the timing when this video comes out, it's going to be so good, because I'll make all the funny points all to it, but then I'll just show you the results. And when you see the results, you'll be like, holy moly. And the idea you talk trash when you have those results is crazy, dude. Because she's been talking about trash and people don't know, like Kassad and all people like that. It's
can't help herself. That's one of those things where it can't be helped. But like CS leaks have just been ridiculously
they roasted the fuck out of it, yeah.
Brutally savage. Because right now they just released one because, of course, you know, as you mentioned, they haven't been eliminated yet. They're still they were in the mid bracket. Now they're in the lower bracket because now it's like triple elimination.
Oh, it's triple, right? I thought it was just a double elim group.
So next match will be up against the Mongolians IHC, and the Mongolians aren't fucking around, man. They really pushed outsiders on Inferno earlier, so it's clear that they
have one more chance.
So like, but then CS.
I hadn't noticed this, dude. That almost looks like a meme when you see it. Like it's just an extra third bracket. Like the joke is this. Here's the joke, Semmler. This obviously was originally conceived by Carmack one time when he was like, "We really need Virtus Pro back." Do you remember they used to do that every season? Yeah. Like, we're just announcing there's now 19 teams in Pro League, and then magically VP's be back in. Like this looks like some fever dream of Carmack's, like quadruple elimination, like.
It's just the steady step along the way of ESL's journey to just embody and just incorporate all TOs and all formats into theirs. It's going to be a mishmash, just melting pit, you know, of just of every CSGO tournament and format. Because, you know, not only that, the show has changed itself as well. We're going to be talking about Pro League.
Yeah, sure.
Don't worry, we're going to be talking about Pro League. But the CS Leaks tweet was just fucking fire, where it goes, breaking. Evil Genius has finally reached 16 rounds across 4 maps of play. Just
I thought the other one they did was a
brutal.
banger because a few days ago it wasn't about the GamerDoc person. Her name's actually like Lindsay something. It was about the one who was the CEO of the company, Nicole Lapointe.
yeah, the Nicole Lapointe,
and that one
yeah.
was a banger where it was just some quote. Like off the top of my head, it was something like, you know, that she was complaining about the way the team had played because it said, you know, this is going to make it seem like since I pretend to manage them, I don't know what I'm even doing. I don't know anything about esports. Like that was
Dude,
that was
Dory,
pretty
I have a whole
well
EG Saga. We're gonna go point to point.
All right,
Give
okay.
everybody the context, and because I mean it's just been endless entertainment for EG. Although I am getting flashbacks to Cloud9 with Henry G at the helm, where it's just like holy shit, everybody's watching and they can't seem to do anything. They can't get it right, and then you just see everything mounting, and then they just turn into a meme. Dude, they legit had more viewers on that match than on the mainstream. I guarantee you, just because everybody wants to watch and see if EG are gonna fail again, like that's the hype now is all around just you're not even rooting for them to succeed, you're rooting for them to fail, and it gets brutal because they're constantly under the microscope now. So it's not the best sort of situation. I can't imagine how it feels for the players. It's got to be a pretty brutal one. Or I imagine it feels a lot like the players felt, on the Cloud9 project when they couldn't get things to connect and they couldn't seem to turn anything going back their way. So a bit of a rough one.
I will say, like, here's the problem, Semmler. The problem there is, I know what you mean. Yeah, it's rough to have all. Like, here's the real problem, right? Because you're evil geniuses, you'd have some attention no matter what. Like, they already were a meme before the GamerDoc woman commented, hence why Kassad's commented and I've commented.
Yeah.
They already were like a slight meme. So they'd obviously get like a little bit roasted, like you say, for these results.
Team and all of that. I mean,
yeah, but the big problem is it's the org's approach that makes people hate them. Now, the reason why that's fucked up is because now if you're the pro player, you're just getting like unnecessary criticism abuse. But let's be real, you would already get it anyway, not least because people know that the big name players in the team do get mega paid. So all I'll say on that one is I won't shed too many tears for people who do get paid like 20k or 30k a month and can't win any fucking games at all in the video game where their only job is win games. Like, I won't feel that sorry for those people, Semmler. I do if they get like hate because of that idiot GamerDoc person. That's annoying if you get blamed for other people's shit. But at the end of the day, they are fucking bad at Counter-Strike and they are paid a lot of money to be good at it. So I think the entire org, like, this is so unacceptable to me. It's just dog shit. I'm sick and tired of this. Like, it's not even a meme. It's not even a meme. You just take one of the best teams in the world and they're shit. They're fucking terrible at the game. It's why if people don't know this recent news, you might think, why is this beef coming out of nowhere? You saw where NAF did an interview, and then he just in the interview openly says essentially like they've got terrible management. That's because, as I pointed out in my CSGO video, if you didn't notice, NAF was supposed to join this team right after they just had that dominant period in the online era when Zeus was the coach and make like a super team. And that would have, and basically he was going to do it. And not only did they like fuck him around, it never happened in the end. But then on top of it, like, you look what happened to all his mates, that people that would have been his mates and be part of the team, this tanked completely. So like when normally the joke is this, it's not that, oh, no one's complained about Simple or Nico, so they must be cool guys. No, it's the other way around. If someone would complain, holy shit, they must be bad. Because normally this stuff stays behind the closed doors, guys. Like, you don't come out and flame teams. Like, if you're NAF, think about how crazy this is. Even though, yes, in this interview, he implies he might go to a European team. As I told you, Semmler, on that past episode, he's got a like German girlfriend or something. There's an obvious reason why, and he saw it twisted. But the other reason that's a crazy statement to make, like, he actually suggests even NAF, who's a pretty chill guy, pissed with how EG treated him. Because, dude, right now in CSGO, there only are 2 games in town if you're NAF. There's Team Liquid and Evil Geniuses. And even though Team Liquid is like in good position, like in theory for his career, it doesn't give him any upside to say fuck EG basically, or they've got bad management. That just means he's got one less place he could go. So actually, I actually thought that was a good example of it. Like, I'll give you the other analogy that'll tie into it. I always used to say, Semmler, that if I ever found out that like DDK privately says someone's a prick, it's like, holy shit, this guy must be bad. Because DDK is like the most amiable person ever. Yeah. Like, he is literally, the joke is like, Jesus just saw someone slap Dan in his face and then Jesus goes, you're not going to fucking do something. He goes, nah, just let him check the other one too. And just go, ooh, let me write that down. You know, like this Dan is just so amiable. So if he ever tells you privately, like you're someone in the industry, it's a fucking prick, you're like, holy mate, that's a fucking red flag and a half, innit? So that's the vibe. When I saw NAF make those comments, I was like, bro, even the people who are quiet are coming out just roasting these motherfuckers. This must be dark.
Dude, I'll read it verbatim because it's actually pretty. There's even more to it. So, and also, if you guys are curious, and this is something I've said in the past, we keep all the links to the articles that we reference in the description below.
Yes.
So you can go and click there, and you'll find the interviews that we're talking about and all that sort of jazz. But let me see. Yeah, quoting from NAF, when I was talking to EG management, that was some of the worst management I think I have ever talked to probably in my life. It's just like, holy, not hyperbole at all. They are clearly not handling their team properly at all. I was like, Liquid is light years ahead of this organization, and I would be an idiot to go and join this team. Dude. So he may play on a European team in the future, quoted by him, and I think that would be a lot of fun. You can see the inspiration with Twists and what he's done on FaZe. He's done a phenomenal job, and I spent a lot of time talking with him. I hope one day I get to play on a top European team. I mean, dude, this is brutal. Not only for Evil Geniuses, because obviously that is the main dunk here, but this is also brutal for North America. I mean, it continues to just be a downward slide for North American CS because they can't hold on to any of their top talent. All of their top talent are eventually just going to elope with international European rosters and move to Germany or something. I mean, Twist is living over in Germany, I'm pretty sure. And so I guess if NAF is thinking along the same, are we going to have like some outpost in Germany from North American players?
This is why it's so key that Evil Geniuses is fucking it up with resources. Because if people no longer want to play for EG and TL's the only game in town, the point is in the future, someone like Grim, who's obviously like the next NA talent, they won't be on a complexity, guys. He will be on ENCE or Mouse Sports. You know what I mean? Like, that's what you'll do. Like, at this point, they're all going to take, I think, the actual page from Twist's book, which is one, you can just go and get a much better team. Like, the best thing about European teams is we have every role. You don't have to be like in NA where it's like, right, I've got like a good rifler, but where's the AWPer? Or like, IGL's a bit dodgy. You don't have to do any of that. You can just go and be in a top team now because it's all top European talent. And then on top of that, I would throw this in as a bigger deal. You don't have to be the best player there. The best thing about Twist's role is he has Rops and fucking Brokey and he's got a banger. It's like if you're on Team Liquid and you are released, like everyone does it to this day, you're still supposed to be the best player, mate. You're supposed to just hard carry the game. And that's like to come second. So I also think it's just going to get really appealing to these guys. And obviously the problem in the past was they just didn't want to live in Europe. But as I think everyone's found now, even if you're still on an NA team, you're going to be in Europe like half the year anyway, mate. You know what I mean?
And that's the root of Complexity's recent success is that they've been saying that they've been staying in for weeks, grinding 10 hours a day in Europe.
You know, makes sense. Yeah.
You're eventually going to have to. You can't just spend the whole time traveling. I think you're going to have to really get strategic with it, where you're going to. I mean,
logically, Semmler, there's only one event on the calendar anymore that's even in NA. It's whatever I am Dallas or whatever. That's it.
Yeah,
I don't think there's another event at all. Like we haven't heard even rumors yet of another major being there. So at the moment, there's one tournament a year if you're a top pro. That's
Dude, I mean, the thing is though. Remember, you're forgetting the key thing. This is the first step that you need to get, and that's to get a European girlfriend. Because that's
why I did that tweet, mate. It's true, isn't it? It's true. Because you know the analogy. Other people don't know the story. You remember back in the day, in the early days of CSGO, all these players were still there. And the saddest thing is, half of them, by the way, knew all the UK people like Richard from Source. But at the time, the French culture was, even though they could all speak fluent English, they just didn't feel comfortable. And they automatically just tried to speak to other people who spoke French. So hence, Semmler could go and talk to them. Or obviously the Belgians talked to them. Or people who were Swiss. But aside from that, they just stayed in their own little enclave. Even at the bar, when everyone would be fucking associated and stuff. But what happened was, you know this, when people like Kiyashima got an English girlfriend, Kenny S got like a girlfriend from Norway, when it started to go, I think Happy maybe even had a girlfriend from some country. When this started to happen, magically, all the ones who did just stand and felt a bit awkward, well there's nothing real awkward about it. They just spent the last like 6 months talking to their girlfriend in English, because it's the only language they had shared, and it just meant that it just immediately broke any awkwardness. And now, you know, in the modern day, now it's not a surprise that G2 and Vitality eventually went multinational period. Like they broke that, whatever was holding them when they felt like they couldn't go outside of French language is gone. So even though it sounds like a weird analogy, it is the same reason, I think, as to why having these girlfriends just makes these players just like, yeah, all right, there's an extra reason to live in Europe. Let's be real. It's an extra reason. Because I get that part. By the way, I totally understand that part. If you're someone like Elige, especially like a guy who's a great player, and you're on the top team, you could easily think, well, why should I have to move? You know, like I'm one of the great players. Can't I just stay in my region? Right? But the point is, what you're really complaining about is not like living in Europe sucks. It's that you're not going to have your friends and family around. Well, imagine if your support network, your actual little family you're making is in Europe. It's actually, I said it like half jokingly, tongue in cheek, but sort of true. If you get a European girlfriend, it's going to fix all those problems.
I mean, Elige fucked up because he's got a North American girlfriend too. So he's doubly tied to North America. That's it. He's not moving to Europe anytime soon.
Well, the joke he had was he almost did it the other way. Because if you remember, not only does he know, like his name actually Lige is like a word in Portuguese, but he used to have a Brazilian girlfriend. If people don't know, admit she was a baddie. I'll tell you that right now. So yeah, he used to. Yeah, that was why people don't know this. This is an example of a story that fans say is nonsense because they're idiots and don't have any inside info. In I think it was 2017, dude. I think it was actually like the year before they got insanely good in TL. There was a period where Elige was privately behind the scenes kicked out of the team. Like the rest of them had like a mutiny. He was kicked from the squad, and he was actually no joke going around the NA scene, and he was just looking for somewhere to go. And at the time, by the way, this is what's mad. You'll love this. Cloud9 didn't want him. Stewie and all those fuckers. Yeah, they didn't want Elige, but for whatever reason, probably have no fucking eye test. So what happened instead was his options. He was actually for real thinking like, can I join like a Brazilian team? Like maybe I can join like Immortals or whatever team it was back at the time then. And the other one, if people know, this is also true as a rumor. The other one was he was going to go and play with Dazed and those banned players where he wouldn't be able to play in a major, but he could just play in the other. Like, you know, when they made the team that eventually became Steel in the gang, but it started as Dazed and AZK and Swag and all this. Right? He was going to do that as well. So like there's a mad world where not only is Team Liquid totally different, but Elige himself. Like imagine if he'd have joined that Portuguese team. Because if people don't know, as far as I know, it's because he's a really intelligent guy as well. I actually, if you've ever seen, he's not like fully fluent, but like he can hold a conversation. He can talk to people as far as I know, like a little bit. Like if you give him time to think, he can speak in Portuguese as far as I know. So, because I know at the major he was doing loads of that, people were loving it. So he actually is by the way, just a real good angler. I've even said this joke on a past episode of By the Numbers that like once when I was in Korea, I won't explain the circumstances, but I had a girl where, as in I won't say who it is, it wasn't a person from esports, obviously. I had a girl that I was like dating at the time, and it was like the first couple of dates. And so she was just playing some game where all I'll say essentially is like she wanted me to learn all the like fucking numbers in Korean, and then I had to like repeat them when she would do it and do like maths or whatever. And essentially there was just, let's just say there was like a sexual fucking dynamic to it. And all I'll tell you, Semmler, is I was so focused. I was on,
sure you were focused.
It was like the craziest Adderall of all time. Like, I was like seeing the numbers, bro. I was just like, yes. And then because the reward system were going crazy on me. So yeah, basically the point is just find an extra reason to want to do something. It'll be fucking easier, won't it? Yeah, I can tell you.
You find the right kind of motivation.
But I swear it was like some sort of fucked. Well, here's the joke, Sam. I would say it would be it's like some sort of fucked up sexual Sesame Street, but in the modern day, that doesn't even mean anything, does it? Like that's supposed to be a mad contrast, guys. But that's how bad the world's gone.
Dude, there's just that clip of Mr. Rogers, singing along, going around on the internet right now that just has me stitched. So good. Not gonna repeat it here. You'll go find it. Go find it if you want to. If you want. But that is. Yeah, dude, that's actually wild. I had no idea that Elige was able to actually speak Portuguese.
That would be a wild one, wouldn't it?
Kinds of timelines.
Because obviously, when people think about Stewie and Tarek, they weren't trying to speak Portuguese. They were only speaking English in the Mabia.
They were just speaking English. Yeah.
Maybe Elige could actually have gone and like integrated. That would be insane, wouldn't it?
I mean, it would give hope to the Brazilian scene right now. They can't seem to catch a break, the poor bastards. Right
now.
No, they can't. They're on a tailspin, a complete and utter tailspin to get any kind of results at all in any tournament. So. Dude, it's even worse because Pro League is coming up and you're like, oh yeah, the Brazilian teams, dude. Imperial and Furia play each other first round, so it's not even like, oh, the Brazilians against the world or whatever. It's like, no, the Brazilians against each other. Even in this tournament, they have to play against each other. It's brutal. Saw's in the same group as well, so you could just have you could in theory have a Brazilian upper bracket semifinal as well. So. We'll see how
I think we do the rest of the EG Saga. Let's just knock it out now.
EG Saga, because I mean it is just so fucking entertaining. It's so the way that I've got this here is okay. It kicked off. I think this is probably like where it started to kick off, where Vorborg he joins Evil Geniuses right as the coach, and he makes that statement where he says this will be. After some work, obviously, but he says, this will be the best season EG has shown in a while. And I think that I remember reading that article and saying like, well, okay, then, this is setting the bar pretty high. I mean, Evil Geniuses, they've had a decent past, a decent, history. If you're talking about, do you want me to give you kind of potential, this is going to be really interesting.
I'll give you the obvious window there. Because by the way, he's absolutely fucked up saying that statement, right? I will remind people, technically when they made the semi at the major, they were still NRG. That was the last event before they became EG. But after the major in 2019, you might remember, they won ESL New York, including beating Astralis twice, once in a best of 5 on LAN. Then they had the Star Ladder tournament they won in like Turkey, and they had some other top 4s and top 8. So like The stupidest part about that comment is it actually implies to me he doesn't know the history of his own team, because this isn't complexity. You're not just saying like, oh, you know, we'll try and have some like half decent land results. You're essentially promising. If you don't know, I think they even became number 2 ranked team in the world at the time. It's like that's enormous. You're essentially promising the world when you say that, Vorborg. By the way, I've got a little aside on that maybe people don't know. This is actually something I've noticed might confuse people. So here's the part that people will forget, okay, Semmler, is if I say to you, who the fuck's Vorborg? Why would he be in this team, right? Everyone's going to tell me, Semmler, he's the guy who got Copenhagen Flames into all those top 8s at majors, right?
That is the usual storyline, yes.
Right, here's the problem. So what was Peter doing on those teams then?
Who?
Oh, that's right. Peter was the coach of those teams. Vorborg was like the fucking, I think the equivalent of like the general manager, mate. So as far as I know, I think he got the players for the team. But as far as I know, Peter coached the guy from Sweden, the guy who's by the way, won a major with NIP as a coach and has been coach of a bunch of other. As far as I know, he was the coach, wasn't he? Am I wrong on that? I'm pretty sure that's correct. So that's already one where it looks like if you're Vorborg, you've blagged it, mate. You've made some stupid Americans who don't know about CS think you coached the team full of like half-decent Danish players to be way better than they are. But in reality, well, you're some sort of management person. So already I think it's mental that you're saying that. And then also, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Pete only coached the first time or something. I could be.
I'm trying to check right now, actually, because Vorborg was present on the team.
Because it says he was a coach, but
I'm actually looking at HLTV right now. This is a bit wild.
Let me see.
Because if it's Swedish PETA going onto Copenhagen Flames, that's just.
Well, maybe it was only Stockholm that he coached then. Maybe Vorborg coached them at Antwerp, where they also made top 8. To be fair,
why is it that I can't see more?
What I would say is this, though: if we pivot it,
PETA was here for a while, and at the end of 2021, going into 2022, PETA was on as a coach.
But yeah, anyway, to go back to the beginning, as you say, if you make those statements, by the way, you are setting the team up to either be incredibly successful or to fail your expectations. Like that's what he started out with. So he's put the bar up here, guys. So let's see, where did it go after this?
Well, if you've been following along, it then went on to have the match that shook the world, is the one that I've titled.
Which it did. It was a massive shock for sure. Yeah.
Which was the Blast Premier Spring Groups 2023 first round. First round, again, remember, best of 3 on LAN, but studio LAN, but first round after a break. So always going to be a little bit of shakiness. Potential for upsets does go up after a break because you don't really know who's going to be in shape and who's going to still have a bit of ring rust and, you know, who's going to be trying to figure out the strategy and like getting back in shape. So Evil Geniuses, you know, they come out swinging and they beat Heroic 2-1. In the Blast Premier Spring Groups. So that was I think
at the time they were actually like number 1 ranked team in the world, maybe even
Heroic were, yes.
Yep.
So they were looking sharp. You know, this is a massive, gigantic upset by any measure. You know, there's no getting around it. And they then also, you know, so it doesn't end there. The Evil Geniuses get battered by Vitality. And then they drop down to the lower bracket. Heroic were doing work in the lower bracket. Close match against Astralis. But then they also succeeded in taking a map off of Heroic in the consolidation final, in the lower bracket final. So Heroic still beat them in the end and still yeeted them out. But they took a map off of them too. So you're like, holy moly. Okay. Evil Geniuses. Is Vorborg living up to the hype? You know, it seems like they're cooking with gas if they're taking maps off, taking series and maps off of Heroic. This bodes well. And so this was the birth of one of the greatest copy pastas in recent memory.
It's gonna have so much, because what's great about that one is it's so memeable, isn't it? Like there's so many sort of quotables in it.
It's amazing. It is. You couldn't have crafted a better copy. Like it's just the perfect, straight out of Twitch chat. Some autist, you know, somewhere figured this one out. But okay, GamerDoc. We just took down the number 1 ranked team of the world, and all the casters can think to say is Heroic didn't show up. We clawed our way back from 217th in the world by building a talent pipeline the whole scene memed on. Step out of the echo chamber and pay attention. So this is from our fan favorite GamerDoc, who you're going to do a video on soon, which is going to be, I cannot wait to watch, to listen to that video, because I'm sure it's going to be hysterical. Because I mean, she just keeps on going, and then she puts, you know, off of that one tweet. That's a tweet. Pimp responded to this tweet saying, "I think this is a bit unfair," and everybody pretty much also kind of responded saying, "This is a bit unfair considering the cast."
Notice also the way Pimp replied was in very good faith. He actually genuinely tried to have a conversation with her and just tell her why she wasn't correct or frame it differently. Like he didn't even seem like he was being shitty, dude. He had a very respectful tone.
I'll go ahead and read Pimp's, you know, just so you know. You're clearly not listening to one word of what's being said by the casters or us for that matter. That was very impressive, and I feel everyone acknowledged that as well, as we should. Heroic didn't show up, so you want casters to blatantly lie for what reason exactly? And it's like, okay, yeah, fair enough. I mean, from what I recall, you know, the casters were giving nonstop praise. Everybody was like, "Holy shit, Evil Geniuses!" I mean, obviously, Heroic didn't show up. It's not like the number one team is supposed to lose against an underdog, but also, credit where credit's due. Good job. So GamerDoc comes back. If an NFL commentator showed up, ignored the offseason changes, called a game entirely based on the previous season performance, and was clearly biased for one team, it would be unacceptable. All I'm asking for is the level of professional standards the whole scene deserves, which, very reasonable. And it keeps going on and on. It's actually, it gets pretty into a long thread. The thread obviously will be linked below. You guys can go check it out if you want. But this is obviously the tweet, the copy pasta posted around the world that essentially just keeps getting quoted back at her over and over and over again. Pretty much everything she says now.
By the way, shall I tell you some key context people are going to miss? Obviously, I won't cannibalize my video too much, but here's the craziest part about it, Semmler. If I just even quickly add like 4 or 5 pieces of context, immediately it becomes ridiculous that you'd brag about this win. So one is this is the first match of the season. She's admitting it herself there. Therefore, even the number one team like Heroic isn't in peak form that they were at the end of the season. They're in the worst form. They're starting the season again. They're at the bottom level. So it's not only the most obvious time when you could get an upset, and it's obvious because you already know who your first round opponent is. That's the way the blast format works in the groups. So it means if you are Vorborg, you've been practicing exactly for this match in your mind, potentially for weeks. By the way, if you're as bad as EG is, I'd hope as long as you can, just get going on it. Look at all the demos. So already that primes you. And then add this detail in, right? So the first map of that series, Semmler, they lost 16-7. They then won 2 maps, 16-14, both of them. So the smallest margin you can win a map by was the map margin they won their maps by. And even in the series they won, they got shit stomped. And by the way, they got shit stomped on their own map. Their own map pick. Now, here's the last detail that I add in that will make this woman utterly, just an object of derision, is she doesn't know Counter-Strike. So how could she qualitatively make a judgment about whether what's on the screen matches up with what the best experts in the game are saying about it? She doesn't know the game, and she doesn't know being on-camera talent. So how could she have any qualification to know what the fuck she doesn't? So the worst thing is she's taken an insane fluke. By now you can even scientifically show it is one of the craziest flukes we've had in a long time on LAN. And she's bragged about it. And remember, guys, she's taken literally the smallest, 1 match worth of data. And she's telling you that you're meant to ignore all the other data and take the outlier and go, that must be because of her and Evil Genius's talent pipeline that they've just beat the number 1 team in the world. Because remember, the same tweet should be applied to every match result, Semmler. So when they lose to nobody teams who are ranked like 125 in the world, what you're supposed to say is Evil Genius's talent pipeline is so bad that they now lose to teams. They don't apply the same logic. So the whole thing just collapses once you even look at it, man. Like, as you say, it will be a very memorable upset. But the sad thing is everyone will mainly remember this stupid meme, not even the bloody result. Like, I would even argue she's actually fucked her own players on that, mate. If all they had was the result win, at least people would give them props then. Yeah, when they lost, then people might say you're overrated or whatever. But now people are going to hate them just because of what she said. That's not even what the player did.
I think this is legitimately driving it. Maybe it's something like kind of weird because it seems like viewership stats are what really matters to these guys. It's like, oh, we can bring in the fans and all that. I think everybody's just tuning in to watch Evil Geniuses fail now. It's backfired in a horrible way where everybody's just kind of tuning in to see the car crash continue to crash. It just keeps going. You're not really tuning in for the right reason or the right reasons. I mean, obviously you can tune in to watch teams lose if you want, but like right now it feels like that's what's happening with Evil Geniuses, where I swear I tuned in earlier and they had more viewers watching the Evil Geniuses match than they did the mainstream. So
this is where you can't. There's a certain type of person, though, Semmler, I've told you on the internet. The key red flag is this. When you notice they have no shame, you have to stop engaging, because someone who has no shame, by definition, is just getting off on the attention. Like, they like it. Like, they'd rather you said something negative than nothing about them. And the way I know this individual is in that category, Semmler, is after this result, the only other tweet she made, which referenced bad results from EG, because after that, she went radio silence, by the way, with all the losses. She would just sort of say nothing. But she had one where recently, for that RMR, which they failed to qualify to, guys, she had the gall to sort of make a tweet that was in the vein. This will definitely be in my video, so I'll just throw it away now as like a quick throwaway line. She basically said a tweet that was sort of like, wow, sure seems like there's a lot of eyes on NACSGO now. I wonder if that could be because of me and my bullshit. It's like, wait a minute. You're not going to cope and spin this that now it's genius that you put all this attention on your team when they fail because it's just given attention. That's like saying, right? No one was interested in watching this like small art house movie, but then I stood out front, shitting my pants all over the wall with diarrhea, and all of a sudden there's a lot of people seem to be paying attention to me and my shitty pants outside this. Like, you haven't done anything for the movie, you idiot. They're just looking at you shitting yourself. Like, what even is the cope there? Holy shit, that's mental. Dude, when someone's doing that, like, they cannot, what that means is her position is not falsifiable. Nothing she does ever means she did it wrong. Like, even if she's totally wrong here, the logic is like, yeah, but I started a conversation. She's just doing that. She's actually doing that. Fucking Martin Bailey that started a convo, didn't I?
In her mindset, you can't lose. You'll
No,
always
you
be able to
can't.
win it
Yeah.
one way or another.
She
And,
wins.
I mean,
She
I
just
guess
wins
really
again.
this is you live by the press, you die by the press. Good press, bad press. If you're in the
Yep.
press, it's all good. That's the mentality here. No such thing as bad press is the way that they see it. And so whatever you can do to get eyes
Unless a
on you,
cast is saying
awesome.
something on a broadcast, then that's unacceptable, of course.
Can't have that though. So to give you to give you an idea of how it's gone for Evil Geniuses since that historic upset against Heroic, they got battered out of IEM Katowice play-in versus Fnatic and Sprout. They then immediately lost in the CCT North Europe series, finished 9th to 16th, getting 2-0'd by Illuminar. Perfectly reasonable for
I
you to not know who
guarantee
Illuminar
fans couldn't even name 2 players on Luminar. I couldn't name maybe one.
I'm actually going to go ahead and take a click. I'm going to click on it. And no, I couldn't.
It's
I
not
couldn't
even
have named a
it's
single
not
one
even
of
the
them.
top Polish team, mate. Remember, at the moment there isn't a top Polish team. They're not even the top Polish team, mate. That's how
So
bad this is.
Morals, Toao,
You might know Morals.
Beanock,
There you go.
Zan, and Masked.
You know what I mean? It's not even like you guys are probably thinking, oh, it's a Polish team. Like, I know the name Illuminar. It's not even Rallen and those guys you actually vaguely know. It's none of them. It's like Morals, maybe a tiny bit know. Like, no one knows these guys.
So then we go to the IAM Rio 2023 North American Open Qualifier, where they also proceed to lose. They beat Demon Time in overtime, 1917. Demon Time, if you click on HLTV, there aren't even the players on the team. Like it's a blank page. So beat them overtime, that's good. But then proceed to lose to ATK in a 30 rounder, and that has DJ Swisher, Mistim, Bodum Master on it, right? So it has not gone well. And then you go into the Blast TV Paris Major, and this gets into our next chapter of the saga, where this is where you actually had a bit of a broadcast tied into it with some talents and everybody. Not that there weren't obviously in Katowice and all that, but in the Paris Major, the one that got all the attention was Kassad, because of course Kassad, he got a bit hard done by, particularly this GamerDoc. We talked about this on a previous episode where they were kind of going back and forth, and Kassad wasn't having any of it. And well, Kassad proceeds. Absolute mad lad.
By the way, just as an aside, this is how you know people who not only don't know esports, but don't even know anything about different cultures. If you're from North America and you were unaware Serbs might hold like certain resentments for a long time, just fucking read a book for fuck's sake. Like, you're fucking with the wrong people. That's what I don't get. It's like Monty's line here, like that. Like, he had this line mainly about me and Richard. Like, you know that line he has where he says, like, why would you antagonize investigative journalists? They might investigate you. It's like, it's the same here. It's like, why would you antagonize a fucking old school Serb, mate? And when you're from North America, it's like, bro, you're primed for him to hate your guts. What are you talking about? Also, you're just going to fuck him over, do him dirty, and then go, but nothing will come from this. Like, are you kidding me?
So Kassad is such a mad lad that he then goes out and puts he creates his own Kassad Grand Slam, where he gives
because instead of $1 million, you get 1,000. I know, it's brilliant.
On the team that knocks Evil Geniuses out of this closed qualifier.
It's too good.
It's just the level that he goes to. So, and it was a story. It was a saga. You were following along the entire time. And so I'm going to sleep at night. It's like, oh, Mythic Mythic are up next. Is their chance to take them? Well, Evil Geniuses actually beat Mythic, so good on them. But Evil Geniuses had lost to MIBR in that. They lost to a team, again, a mix called YUR, don't know. Rain and Vendetta, they managed to beat. but then they get taken out by Team One. So Team One, congrats to Team One and Peacemaker for winning the Grand Slam, the Kassad Grand Slam. He gets contacted, and then he literally sends them the money. And then one of the guys from the team says, Kassad sent the money. Tomorrow I'll take the boys skiing with the money. So he literally pays for a ski trip for the team that takes out Evil Geniuses.
The only thing is, though, I saw someone made a comment, and it did make me think the same thing. The problem with that logic is, look, if they were already on the trip, Semmler, yeah, you could use the €1,000 like or dollars for something on the trip. But someone did make the point, like, there's no way $1,000 would cover like a ski trip, though. So here's my joke. What happened was, obviously, they're not actually like native English speakers, if you don't know. So what must have happened is they must have all been talking in a foreign language, and then they said to the translator guy, like, what do they say? What they actually said in their language is like, $1,000. Tell you what, boys, we're gonna be having fucking fun with mountains of snow tonight. And then the guy goes like, they're gonna go skiing. Yes, they're
There you go.
there you go. That's the joke. There's the joke.
Especially,
You know, basically, all I'm saying is when that guy said, wow, we're going to be, you know, enjoying the finest powder
Gonna take a
tonight.
nice trip,
They,
yeah.
they weren't talking about going to Aspen. They weren't going to Aspen, believe it or not, guys.
So the next one is that
Shout out to whoever
Kassad-
whoever won that $1,000. That's pretty legit.
Yeah.
It was actually like, if you don't know as well, those are Brazilian players who they could probably use a bit of that money. I don't think they need it, but it's a nice little bonus if you're at that level.
For
Get a little
sure. I mean, come
$200
on,
for winning a match.
You're not going to turn it up, and it just adds. I mean, it's a nice little thing, and Kassad actually followed through with it immediately. What a champ! And then he also goes ahead, you know, a class act. He goes ahead and clears the air, and he says, "I want to clarify one thing. I have nothing against Evil Geniuses players and coaches. I know they are doing their best. All this is directed to the incompetent upper management from the organization. This is 100% their fault. Keep working hard, Breezy, Automatic, and Co." So he said, you know, Kassad is making it clear. He's got no beef with the players. He's got no beef with the coaches. He's got every beef, like all the beef, with the people higher up in this organization who basically called him out. And so then this is where it gets thicker, I suppose, right? Where Zeus then, Wilton Prado Zeus, hops in and says, EG management blows on Twitter. Just comes out of left field. So now the pile-on starts. The pile-on begins. Because then, you know, it's like all of a sudden everybody's...
At the beginning of that video, Semmler, almost everyone I spoke to was not only like, actually, yes, I will give you info, but they were all to a man just like, I actually despise the management. It was mental, mate. I was expecting a bit like the Vorborg storm were coming too soon. There'd be at least a few people who were like, no, they seemed fine to me. Like, it was nobody. I think there was something like one ex-player who was like, I didn't really have a problem with them. That was about it. That's it.
Yeah, that was and so then you get the NAF chiming in as well. So you had Zeus on Twitter, then you had NAF in that interview, and then of course CS Leaks has to come in with one of the absolute best tweets I've seen all year so far. CS Leaks report: EG CEO Nicole Lapointe Jameson sends angry email to CSGO team after embarrassing 0-1 start in Paris RMR qualifier. This reflects very poorly on me as someone who's pretended to manage this team. You're making it look like I don't know anything about esports or CSGO. Dude, CS Leaks have just been on their game. I mean, they've been just spitting straight fire since the inception of the account, but they're not missing a beat on this whole EG thing. Just banger after banger. So this brings us full circle where Vorborg now, you know, again, he's kind of kicked this off with that spicy email or that spicy interview that he did where he essentially said, you know, they're expecting big things. But then he comes around and says, okay, thanks for all the support I've seen you guys give to me and the players, and most of the criticism we receive is fair. However, I've been reading a lot about the EG management and wanted to add something. EG management has been nothing but extremely supportive of me, even when I don't believe I've deserved it, and never added pressure. To suggest that we can't perform because of a couple of tweets is outlandish to me. The team should be performing better, and it's my responsibility we haven't. As long as I'm still the head coach of EG, I will continue to do everything in my ability to pay back the trust, support, and resources invested into me, my Evil Geniuses. So Vorborg, at least coming full circle, you know, took responsibility for the projected team success, let's say, for the projected success in the future. And he's also taken responsibility for the knocks that the team are taking now. So this does kind of take us back to that point of, was he really in charge of strategic coaching on Copenhagen Flames, or was he responsible for talent scouting? Because the thing is, they're not the same thing. Like, you can find good players, but can you actually get them to play together and execute a strategy together and have an overall vision for how the team is supposed to function? I mean, I suppose, you know, as a talent scout, you're going to have to kind of find players with qualities that you know are going to work with the team. but to get it all to gel together, it may be that Vorborg, I mean, the big question now that we're going to be looking to see if he can turn things around is whether or not he's bitten off more than he can chew.
His problem, mate, is he doesn't even have the pieces to do this. It's why him making that statement about this year and how they're going to have the best results is so stupid. Like, you don't have any fucking pieces in the team, you idiots. There's not a single player, and remember, you still have Automatic and Breeze, these big names. There's not a single name in this team that anyone ever says they should be in Team Liquid. Like, wow, they should be in a better team. Nobody does. Nobody. Like, the real joke is, if anything, Kassad's almost doing them a bloody favour. That is actually, a lot of people are focusing the attention on the management and, like, this GamerDoc person, not Vorborg and the fucking players, because I actually think Vorborg's a fool. I think what he's done is he's promised the world publicly and privately, but he doesn't have the right players for it. And I've heard internally, like I pointed out in that video, they're a nightmare, EG management. And here's the problem. I actually take umbrage with what he said here, Semmler, because one, what fucking possible context would this be? Because remember, what he's saying here, Semmler, is mental. He's saying, I'm hearing all these bad things about management. Okay, pause, Vorborg. Why would that be a problem? Are they false? You didn't even say that, you cunt. You didn't even say they're false. So you didn't say they're false, but you then attempted to intentionally insert a statement where the implied context is maybe they are false because they're being awesome to me. Now, imagine how mental this would be. I'm going to give you an analogy. If a woman came out and said, my ex-husband used to beat me, and then the current wife of that ex-husband goes, he doesn't beat me, why would you be saying that except in the context that you're trying to imply, like, so I'm just saying, who do we believe? That's what you're almost doing. And also, the reason it'd be gross why I use that example is, you weren't there when she was. How do you know what happened to her? So in this case, Vorborg, you are absolutely, my dude, carrying water for scumbags that I have exposed as scumbags. And here's the juice. I'll even give you this one as a freebie on By the Numbers, even though it's just, because my videos has got so much, mate. Don't worry about it. Here's a little free piece of juice for you. I heard that a player in Vorborg's Evil Geniuses team, remember there's 3 different Evil Geniuses teams and he just coaches the main EG one. One of the players that was in Vorborg's Evil Geniuses teams literally told me that that GamerDoc person was one of the reasons that it fucked up the performance of the team. Your literal team while you were there. There you go. That's what happens, by the way, Vorborg, when you fuck around and you think no one in the scene can ever get access to your team and your players. Mate, I'm like fucking, sadly, won't know the reference. I'm like some fucking super hacker, mate. I should have access to all domains that you're in. I can get all that info. So it's just mad egregious because I know he's just trying to sort of be like, maybe he hasn't had any problems. He's just being like, they're cool to me. Well, but it's like, he may also be
trying to cover his neck. I mean, you know, it's like now the management have put their necks out there. They've stuck themselves out there a bit. And now
the worst thing is, he even implies, if you think about the first part, Semmler, he's almost implying, be mad at me, not EG, because I didn't deserve. By the way, even the way that's phrased sets off the craziest alarm bells in my head, where it's like, you know, EG are really great guys, Semmler. Instead of punching me in the face 10 times like I deserve because I am a worm and a maggot, they only punch me 8 times. They are the like, what the hell, mad Stockholm syndrome is this? No, like it's really disturbing because the difference is, like, I think the way that you would praise people if they were just like I'll give you an example. If someone came and said that like Richard Lewis is terrible, but I wouldn't say like he's not honest, that he never did that to me. I'd be like, I'd say all the great things about. We talk about he's one of the greatest journalists ever. He's heralded. He's got integrity. He didn't do any of that, you notice. He just goes like, they were nice to me, even though maybe I don't even deserve it. What is that? And by the way, that also implies, Vorborg, you should be fired for the results. Like, I didn't make that up, but you're sort of setting that framework up. The whole thing was disturbing to me, mate. Because, and as you say, there's a world where, if you know what I know about EG, I have to wonder, did someone say, get your ass out there and say something? We're in Astralis territory now, boys.
Because, I mean, the way that it's phrased, it does look like he's covering for management.
It's like you want to keep your job,
ingratiating
make a statement. Yeah, just say something to the fans.
He may be running cover, or he may be just trying to ingratiate himself, saying, hey, listen, look, you know, look how I took this hit for us right now, you know? It may be something like that, trying to take the heat off. I mean, dude, the thing is, the guy's got his whole team can't seem to get a win to save their lives, even though they have a couple of veterans on the team. They have some firepower. They cannot seem to get anything done. They just lost 2-0 as we're recording this to Eternal Fire. I mean, it's not like Eternal Fire don't have some firepower, and there's Antares and whatnot, but I mean, still, come on. You got to be able to take them out, or at least take a map off of them. Getting 2-0'd, even Kassad believed that Evil Geniuses could take a map off of Eternal Fire. He put the bet out there publicly that he said he was betting that they would take at least one map. So, I mean, it's so you can understand why the coach has got to be scrambling a little bit right now, trying to figure out what in the hell can he do to cover himself, because he's clearly come into this project. I mean, he's said himself that the vision that the upper management of Evil Geniuses have talked about publicly, right? You know, the blueprint and bringing in more players and all of that, and you know, adding more to the support to the structure. Those are all things that attracted him to Evil Geniuses to begin with. And so, you know, he's clearly signed on with this thing. So if he can't get it to go, if he can't get it to function, the question is whether or not he's going to have a job in the future. And also, does he have a team afterwards who are willing to bring him on? Because, I mean, look, he came in as the coach here. If he can't get any results, it's going to be looking a bit grim for him if he has to go elsewhere. If it doesn't pan out on Evil Geniuses, I mean, what do you got to show for yourself? It's almost kind of like a Malik situation here. And speaking of which, Malik is still a part of this team, isn't he? He's still the head analyst,
strategic coach or whatever it's called,
right?
Yeah.
Strategic coach, head analyst. You know, he's a part of this somehow, or is he? Or is he just collecting paychecks and he's just like, yep, not my problem anymore? I don't know. You know, like Vorborg, this is on you, my dude.
By the way,
the coach now. I
that
don't
in
need to take the
itself
slack.
is a terrible situation if people don't understand. You might think, no, it all ended up fine, Semmler, because they hired Malik back and he has a job there. No. If you look at what was said publicly, Malik only joined that team to be the head coach and to have complete control and to even pick the players. That's why the Evie guy pointed out in the one VP or PV or whatever it is, FR article, that like they hadn't done that by forcing Stewie 2K on the team and not letting Malik have control. So then to later hire Malik and say, essentially, you're just a strategic analyst / watch demos and tell us, that's none of the things he signed up for originally. Like, look, it's cool Malik still gets to have a job and work in esports. That's a good thing. They didn't actually make good on that at all. Like, yeah, they fired Stewie 2K, but they didn't give Malik what he was supposed to have, which is to control the project. And by the way, he would have been actually a very good person to put in that position, because since they wanted to bring in like these European talents, I don't think he would have been bringing in Neelan and whoever, although I have heard they're fucking terrible for signing players. So I think even the Malik situation is a bad one, mate. It's like you basically cocked that guy into like a fucking limited role. He earned that spot.
Not only that, I mean, they've fucked him so hard that he doesn't even use Twitter anymore. His last retweet was November 10th, 2022. It doesn't look like he's touched it. And
he's probably been told, let's be real, if you think about what happened with him and the Evie guy coming out publicly and making statements, they will have almost certainly been told in his case when he got hired back, don't say anything on social media. I would imagine that would be a speculation.
His header still reads head coach for EG.
Yeah.
So he probably hasn't touched his Twitter account since. He's just doing he's probably just doing the strategic side of things, just trying to look at demos and figure out how to get this team to actually function together, and perhaps, I guess, work with Vorborg. I mean, I suppose the buck ends with Vorborg, so Malik is in this kind of weird limbo where he just kind of gets to provide strategic assistance and leave it at that. He doesn't even get to kind of decide what the team is doing or not. I mean, you would think that if they have 15 players to pick from, you know, they just brought Junior into the whole system as well. I mean, if you got all those players to pick from, you should be able to find one team that's competitive, that can actually get something done. And between Vorborg and Malik, it feels like you should have at least some CS brains there to make it happen.
Also, by the way, people said this is a meme at the time they did the move, but it's almost true now. Like, the joke is the only big upside I can see, Semmler, that they've had from buying the 2 extra teams is it looks less embarrassing that those teams would beat them. Remember, when one of those teams was called Party Astronauts, they were actually arguably better than EG is now. Like, that team actually was causing the odd upset online. So the joke is all you really did is just buy up teams that would beat EG in an RMR. Like, because remember, there's the most fucked up thing EG did, Semmler. People are going to tell you, no, they are promoting NA talent. All they did is take 2 teams off the board of being able to play in the RMR. Like, if you look at how whack the RMR is for the Americas, those teams, one of them, like the Party Astronauts team, would have a chance, mate. Even like you could get the right string of upset wins and maybe sneak in and out. You can't. You can only have 1 team per org, obviously. So I don't even know how much it's a good thing, mate. Like, it's cool that people get paid. I guess that's about the only upside. You get paid the money.
Yeah, so perhaps it actually gives you a little bit to work with. We'll see. I mean, this whole
the idea it's a talent pipeline though is nonsense. Like, come on,
it's not done yet. This is going to be the thing. It's not done yet. It's going to be fascinating to see how this pans out, because now all eyes are on Evil Geniuses, whether they like it or not. It is kind of a Cloud9 situation. When Henry was at the helm of Cloud9, and there was a lot of buzz around him, a lot of attention, and they could never seem to get it to gel. They could never seem to get it to come together. The question is whether or not that's going to be the case here with Evil Geniuses. Are they going to be able to actually find a working solution given all the talent and the CS brains that they have behind this? Or is it going to just peter out because, well, Evil, you can only stand being a meme for so long. I mean, Evil Geniuses, they want people to be tuning in to watch them win, not because, not just to watch them lose over and over again and kind of root for them losing to boot. So We'll be watching that.
I've got a
let's
big
change
question for you,
gears here.
actually, though. Here's a question, though.
All
Here's
right, go
the
for
last topic we need to ask about evil geniuses, though, Semmler, which is, so I'll just give you a stat right now. So in the last, looks like, right, so we've only been on LAN again in terms of Blast format from fall 2021. It looks like EG's come last place in every group stage of Blast. Now, remember, if you're in an org, Semmler, like ENCE, Outsiders, they always complain. It's really hard to get into the Blast circuit because you have to play all those online qualifiers into the showdown, into like being told you probably have to beat like Vitality in like an online best of 3 to get into the actual Blast 4. Because EG's a partner team, they just spawn into every group stage, but they come in last in all of them. Like they come in 10th to 12th place every group stage now. This will be like the 4th in a row or something. So like eventually, Semmler, there's the other thing people don't know. This is about business now, not just like optics. If you're the other teams in these partner dynamic like markets like that, where it's like we're only group, you're actually supposed to eventually vote to kick these fuckers out. What you're supposed to do is go, why do we have EG here just taking up a spot and losing every time when that should be insert whoever you think it should be. Maybe it should be Cloud9 or, you know, whoever it is. It's not in that particular network. Yeah, but there's a bunch of teams. So like at some point, just competitively, they can't just keep having free entries to tournaments to come last place. Even if they have money, it's not enough. Because as you're saying, Semmler, like I'll bring it back to a point you said earlier. It's not like they're Brazilians where they bring crazy viewership. Like EG probably brings fuck all viewership except for the meme angle of like, let's watch them lose and laugh. Like it's actually quite sad because remember that was a big deal for these teams like Louvre agreement in the ESL, the Blast partner team. This was a big deal. So to me, I think it's crazy that they're just bombing every single one and we're just supposed to go, that's okay. That's all. Even this one, if people don't know, where they beat Heroic, well, remember that was in the section that's just for seeding. They still came last place. They were eliminated in that first of the playoff match immediately. Last place 10th to 12th. Mm-hmm. So when does it end?
Well, you know, maybe the way to go about it is to move to the Asian region and compete there.
At least they'd have a good team there.
They would have a good team.
Probably lose to IHC a few times, but you know they'd be second or best, third best.
The reason why I'm bringing that up is because there was just recently the beginning of the RMRs over there with let me see here, the Chinese RMR qualifier. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because there was a bit of news that caught my eye, was that HSG, which was one of the female teams that competes in Impact League, they were getting a bit of news or there was a bit of a stir around them because apparently they were going to be brought in as a mixed team with 3 female players and 2 male players, and that they were going to be competing in this closed qualifier. And in fact, getting a direct invite to the closed qualifier, despite the fact that there is an open qualifier that other teams were having to compete to get into. And the reason why they get this invite is because of the way that Valve are working out with the regional standings. So regional standings, right? You accrue points based off of how many tournaments you're competing in and also prize money of those tournaments.
Yes, this is the new system they brought in for the qualification, yeah.
Exactly. And so because of how this system is set up, HSG female actually is ranked number 8th in the Asian standings, which was enough to get them a direct invite to the closed qualifier.
So wait a minute, essentially what they've done is sort of a bait and switch. Like they've used the female team to get like a ranking and then they've sort of said like, thanks for the ranking and then pivoted and put some male players in. Is that like essentially what's implied?
Well, no, you still have to keep a core, right? You still have to keep a core.
No, but I mean, essentially what it means is like the ranking came from the female team's play.
Yes.
Precisely. It doesn't count ESL Impact, right?
The way that I see it here is that they are getting this because there's more money to be won in the Impact League than in the local Asian tournaments, but because they're
the prize money from the female tournament actually the non-male one counts.
That's what's going on here. Wow. Because otherwise, because they only compete, if you look at the roster, they only compete in Impact events.
Right. And yet that is dodgy, yeah.
And yet all of the male teams, they're competing in everything. Well, apart from the Impact events, obviously, because they can't. But because of how the prize money works out, I mean, the Impact League has got hundreds of thousands of dollars in it, whereas you're winning an Asian tournament, you're getting like 10 grand.
Oh, sure, of course.
So the way that it works out is that these guys, it might be the only region where it's possible for a female team to accrue the points necessary for an invite in that fashion to get straight invited directly in, and so. Obviously, in predictable fashion, they did proceed to get just utterly destroyed in this tournament and just chucked out 16-0, I think, as well by Tyloo, if I'm not mistaken. Hold on, let me find that real quick. Tyloo got knocked down. Yeah, 16-0 on Inferno, 16-5. I think they won 8 rounds total. No, not even. They won 7 rounds total out of 3 maps. So they just got utterly wrecked. And it's like, okay, fine, fair enough. But it's a problem if you're going to just if it's all let's say if you're going to base invites off of cash money, and if you're going to if these kind of if this is how it breaks down, that you can get invited in this fashion because the tournament that you participate in has more money, I think at this point you're going to have to make an adjustment just to handle this kind of situation, because that spot clearly should have gone to a more deserving team. One of the teams that was qualifying or trying to qualify through the open bracket, the open qualifier, probably would have murked HSG in a match, and so they would have potentially got the spot instead of HSG. So I think one of the only solutions that you can offer here is that tournaments that are exclusive to gender do not get RMR points.
I mean, that's just obvious. Like, it just
And
gives you
just
an
leave it at
advantage.
that. It's like, okay, if you're playing in tournaments and only in tournaments where there's a limiting factor, i.e. you can, your gender says this, so you can only play. If you have any of that, if it's not an open tournament, open format where everybody can compete, that tournament shouldn't get to count towards RMR points. And so you shouldn't be getting invites that would put you over more deserving teams.
Oh, that's just obvious to me. And like I say, it allows you to do a bait and switch, which is you get the points by playing with the female team in the female league. And then you could just take the two best players in your country who are male and add them to your team and have not only an invite spot, but even a way better team in the invite spot. So, by the way, I just thought up a brilliant joke. So I'll just throw it out there now for you, because no one will remember this shit anyway. Here's the joke I'm going to use when I address the Vorborg topic. It goes like this. It's a quote from Vorborg, which goes, all I want to say is I know Bluebeard has a bad reputation, but in the time I've been married to him, he hasn't killed me, has he? You get the reference? Bluebeard?
Bluebeard is Lucifer, Satan.
No, Bluebeard was a very famous pirate in a famous story where he gets married to a woman and then he takes her back to like his castle because he's like a pirate, and he's a really cool guy. He's just a wonderful husband, but he just tells her, "Look, do you trust me?" Yeah. Says, just all you have to do is one rule: don't ever go in that room that's locked over there. You can do anything else you want. You're the mistress of the house. Like, I'm so
really familiar.
Yeah, it's a fucking story. So it's not a real tale. So what happens is he goes away in the story, and obviously this woman, like, she's overcome with curiosity. Like, what could be in that room? And it's just driving her crazy, right? And then the premise goes, when she opens up that room, it's just like, I can't remember if it's like all his past ones or it's like there's like his dead ex-wife there or whatever. And the premise is he is a murderous pirate. So the premise of the story is, now that she knows his secret, he's gonna have to kill her too. So the joke in this analogy would be Vorborg's the guy going, what are you talking about? There's all these rumors that he just kills his wife. He hasn't killed me. It's like, yeah, yet. Vorborg, you've only been there how long? Like fucking 8 months or something, 6 months. Like, you haven't had time, mate. Like, wait a year and then we'll have that convo about what's going on in EG.
They'll get to you yet. Don't worry.
Yeah. By the way, in this spoiler, they will. There's a reason why everyone I know who's been a coach at EG has bad things to say, mate.
It's just, I mean, there's a clear track record there. There's a clear track record that it's a problem, and that the org doesn't really have any clue as to what it's doing, and it doesn't seem like it's limited to CSGO either. So I mean, evil geniuses are in hot water to try and find results anywhere at this point, and we'll have to see. I mean, there was a point. This isn't in CSGO, but this is something that PPD brought up. Dota major champion and also still working in esports. I think he works over at Esports Driver now with Adam Apicella. Those guys. But, it's one of the things he pointed out where he thinks that orgs are still just way too dependent on VC. They're just surviving off of all of their raised money instead of actually finding ways to generate profit and generate revenue. And so it's still the same problem of, okay, how do you actually make as money as a team instead of just finding another sucker to leech, a few more million off of until you can find, until, in the desperate hope that you do find a solution someday. In the meantime, you're just going to survive off all this VC. I mean, it's still the same sort of scenario. And to me now, EG just look like that. It just looks like a bunch of incompetent people who are just surviving off of VC. And then, they're going to drive they're going to drive one of the, let's say, I mean, you could say one of the most storied brands in esports history. They're going to drive it straight into the ground.
Yeah.
It's a tragic turn of events.
Like, I can tell you right now, they will drive it into the ground, because if you just know that, the big problem is, like I told everyone, I initially started this story actually from like League of Legends. Like, they just banned me from doing interviews at League of Legends basically. So I started looking in there, but it's one of those ones where, because it's the same 2 or 3 people at the top of the org making all the fucked up decisions and who were incompetent, it permeates the whole org. Like, even when you find someone who's legit, they're just handicapped or hamstrung by not being able to do extra things that they want to do, or the good ideas get shut down, or they get fired eventually, or blamed for shit. So the whole thing's a nightmare, mate. The whole thing's a nightmare.
Well, hopefully hopefully, just bringing it back real quick to this HSG story. Hopefully, we'll see some changes to how the format works with this new RMR qualifier. I mean, I guess Valve are still going to be ironing it out, and there maybe they just sometimes something slips through the cracks, and you're not quite able to pick up on all of the different kind of variables out there. And in this case, maybe Valve missed the buck on this one, and they'll be able to make some changes in the future to avoid just this kind of situation. Because if you think that there aren't going to be teams that are going to try to take advantage of a situation like this, where it's like you can compete in a much less competitive environment and still be able to qualify for the most prestigious events, there are going to be teams that are going to try and take advantage of that sort of situation. So. Or abuse it in some fashion. So Valve are going to have to make some kind of adjustment for the Asian situation and with the RMR points and the how the points break down and how the qualifiers break down and how the invites break down, because I mean, it seems like it could be a problem going forward. All right, let's talk about some Pro League, because have you watched the show at all? Have you had a chance to watch it at all? Because I've been it's like, I get it. This is ESL's bid to show that, hey, they can be cool too, kids. It's like, hello, fellow kids. How's it going these days? But like, my immediate take is that they'll take your favorite events and wear them like skin suits. If they're going to take up the calendar so that it's impossible for a Flashpoint or a Summit to operate, they might as well become some kind of ESL stylized mockery of them. And the reality is that there's that one still that showed up on the Counter-Strike Reddit where somebody screenshotted it. And there's just the couch setup where you get to hang out with the pros and hang out with the different kinds of talent, and everybody kind of gets to sit around and shoot the shit. And then they have a bunch of Nerf guns sitting on the desk. They have a bunch of Nerf guns sitting on the coffee table in front. And I'm like, yeah, that's perfect, because they aren't real guns. This isn't the real thing. This is a Nerf version of Summit or Flashpoint. This is an ESL light, ESL gray version of those better products. But because it's ESL, and because you still have to respect the HR rules, you still have to respect all of the PR rules, all of how everything needs to be nice and corporate and neat and clean and tidy and put together and packaged. You can only go so far before you would cross the line into something actually creative. So what you've done is you've kind of just met him halfway. You're the Nerf gun. You're just shooting the little Nerf darts, and not quite getting there. So. At least it's so hard not to always just come down like, just be negative all the time. But it is kind of frustrating in the sense that ESL have got the monopoly now, and it seems like they're going to try and cover the whole calendar and do a variety of events. So instead of really focusing and saying like, we're actually going to be the most professional, we're going to set the standard, we're going to be the most professional, we're going to make that our brand. Cologne, Katowice, we're going to crush it, knock it out of the park. These are going to be the only 2 CS events that anybody talks about of the year. Everybody's dressed to the nines. The event looks fantastic. It's a packed stadium the entire time. Really go out on that front. Or you go out on like the kind of hybrid events like the IEM Dallas and IEM like Sao Paulo or whatever, where it's kind of like a LAN, but it's also kind of like it's like a Gamescom or a DreamHack, how DreamHack used to be. These kind of hybrid things where it's like, oh, you got the gamers, but you also have the esports, and you kind of mix everything together. Or you're going to go through this kind of Summit like corporate Summit style brand where you're going to try and have everybody having fun, but really you're just running. You're continuing to have Pro League just so that nobody else has a chance to run anything in the space. You're just going to take a month up of the calendar, 2 months up of the calendar, because you have 2 seasons of it, right? And not allow anybody who could potentially do that format, right? Because their brand isn't tied to being corporate. Their brand isn't tied to being all nice and tight with a bow on top. Their brand could actually get out there and take a different tack. But that's not going to happen because there's no space in the calendar for that brand to actually get its foot in the door and do something with tier 1 teams, which is what happened with Flashpoint, and obviously what happened with Summit, because you don't see Summit running any CSGO events either anymore. They could have been doing this kind of brand and really been doing it, but instead ESL have taken that and are wearing it like a skin suit. So
this is why fans are just fucking impossible to deal with, mate. Because the same fan who goes, brilliant, it's just like CS Summit. You mean the event that is dead because ESL has monopolized the whole calendar and are now doing a worse version of that event. And like, first of all, I'll put a pin in that because I'll come back to it. But spoiler, I don't believe any of this is in good faith. It's just a cynical pivot that costs no money. So we'll go back. Here's what I'll say first and foremost, which is, when you run this type of an event, right, they're always going to imply when they're ESL, like you say, they're like, we aren't this big corporate monolith who just has fucked up ways of doing things. We are just cool like you. Look, here is your favorite person, Sponge. Here is Machine. You love these. Here is Stunner. He will say a funny joke now. Haha. You love them, don't you? We are not anything weird and corporate. But if you know anything about ESL, by definition, you cannot on ESL ever be actually truly edgy. You cannot ever be the person who pushes the boundaries. You can't even really, like you say, have much fun or be creative. Like it's in a very, very strict like set of parameters that you can even do a skit or have a funny segment, etc. Like the joke is that we didn't really address it much, but that whole like fucking fake wrestling segment of Kassad when he was like pretending he was having an outburst about EG or whatever, like that's about the closest they've come to like a believable, like edgy segment. And even then it was such obvious like pantomime / porn movie level acting that the idea of anyone took that seriously, you're just an absolute fucking peon. If you thought that was real for 1 second of your life, you're just an imbecile. Like you don't even speak. And then also that thing so I wanted to address first that you were talking about. I don't even accept that framing, Semmler. Like I know it's not going to be negative. Well, wait a minute. I've said this before with like Richard Lewis. You have to imagine Richard Lewis is the detective in like a movie like Seven, where he's going around and every single crime scene is the most horrific murder ever, the most evil shit. And you, a dickhead fan, sit in a diner and overhear him talk about his work and go, why do you have to be negative all the time? Have you ever thought about just having a smile and bringing positivity? No, you idiot. His whole job is he's essentially taking out the trash of society and cleaning up the most fucked up scenario. So you know what? Do me and Semmler sit there and go, you know what? Actually, everything's brilliant with Evil Geniuses. They're winning all the matches. How are we going to fake it that they're actually this terrible org that's abusing everyone, dog shit of the game, and have made a mock? How are we going to do it? Really going to have to craft a fucking narrative? No, that's the joke is it's the other way around. To actually find positives in the esports scene the last few years, that's panning for gold, mate. That's because even when you think you've found a bit, I think I found something positive. Oh no, wait, that was just a cynical fake thing for charity. They don't even believe. Put that back. That's shit as well. That's not gold. Fool's gold in the end. Like there's almost nothing. Like we can talk if we talk about like teams winning games. Like if you want to talk about how GT won against Heroic, we can talk all types of brilliant things about how players played and what they did and how they overcame deficits and how Heroic even played great CS. We can do in the game stuff. But the whole reason people like Richard Lewis want to leave this scene is because of how bad the industry is. Like fans are so dumb, Semmler, that essentially Richard is the canary in the coal mine, dying of coal, like fucking too much coal in the air, going, and then they're going, he's going to fucking make all the miners have a fucking bad attitude in the mine. Look, he's like, how are they supposed to go down there and breathe in that dust when you can barely breathe now, little bird? What are you doing, canary? You fucking imbecile. You're supposed to heed the message that someone who literally dedicated their whole life to this industry, wanting it to be better, is essentially saying to you, it's existentially impossible for me to continue because it cannot ever be improved. And you go, have you ever tried bloody smiling more? Like, give me a break. Like, you know who we don't need in these spots? People like that. People who don't help, but are just there to actually like pile on for the people who already are dealing with all this shit. And then if we come back to the actual angle here, Semmler, the problem with this is ESL is like Riot, because they are an enormous monolithic steamship that has to slowly turn over months and months and months and months. It means they never can actually pivot and make it believable. So here's the issue, Semmler. I could believe that this is just a fun sponge. It's clearly inspired by Sponge and fucking Machine. If you think on Stunner, if you think about what they like, right? I could believe they inspired this product if it had already been like that last year or when we first came offline. But you know, Semmler, that's not the way ESL ever build Pro League. The reason why Pro League was the one that Flashpoint had to go directly head to head with is like, look, Katowice is the flagship event of the ESL, but the flagship product is Pro League. Because you know this, they constructed the whole rankings and circuit to be based around you play Pro League and then you do my other tournaments as well. That's a key part of how you get your points, your ranking, all that jazz. And as you say, they take like a month, 2 months out of the calendar, depending on who you are, right? When they did that approach, that wasn't a for-fun tournament, dude. And remember, the reason it's in Malta is to fucking save costs, etc. It's not because that's the best players.
Subsidized for sure.
So the idea that like, no, we're just doing it because it's just a fun, chill sort of event, that just sounds like a pivot when you had nothing else. What happened was everyone complained last Pro League. Wait a minute, it's like this amateurish broadcast that has all the like ESL branding, but you're just in a room with no fans and it's not like a real event. So instead you were like, yeah. Oh, think about it. Come down to the ESL Pro League. Not even like a real event. It's one of those fun ones. You know, when you have a couch and you let people sit on it and say outrageous, things, just say things. Yeah, we're going to say things too. Maybe they'll be crazy. Ho, watch out for this. Whoa, what's that, Kassad? The pizza man's here. Ding dong. Ooh, okay, I'll go look. That's a rather large fucking salami. Give me a break. Like, that's the fucking level ESL's on now, mate. And then all the fans like, holy shit, I can't believe it's actually going to have sex on camera in real life. Like, that's totally inappropriate, a pizza guy would do that with the customer. Like, why are they so bad in esports, bro? Why is everyone so dumb? Why is everyone so dumb? Whatever.
That's the thing. It's I think you nailed it. The reason why I'm getting sidetracked here is Counter-Strike powered by Source 2 leak apparently just popped up 3 minutes ago. So
I'm so done with all those news, mate. Oh, it's Source 2. Until Valve just says so, I don't care, mate. I've just
exactly.
Remember, really I'll just reiterate the ultimate lie of all time. Right, guys, this is how badly this one aged. You remember the fishiest dude, the guy who used to translate for Zeus, Semmler? Do you remember when he said at a certain major that the announcement like CSGO 2 was coming or something? That was in 2018. So you know what, guys? I'm more than done with any leaks like that. Like, same as you get the same leak every 3 months. It's always some variant of this, Semmler. Like some behind the scenes thing in the game that if you look up says Source 2. Oh, they've registered Counter-Strike as a domain. Like I don't care, mate. Like at this point in time, if you don't know this as well, also that is actually how companies have to behave, whether they do the project or not. Like people already register domains for movies that might never come out, that have just been greenlit. You already do all that shit. So sadly, it looks always like you're this close to Source 2 coming out tomorrow, but it doesn't seem like it does it, mate. Like, in fact, wasn't that been the rumor, like, before every major for the last 3 years? Like, oh, the next major, they're going to announce Source 2 and CSGO's getting an update. It never does. It never does. Just keeps rolling on. And why would you, Semmler? You just talked about in the last episode. We just hit a brand new peak of players. Like, things are going great in CSGO. There's no rush to get another game out the door. It's going great.
Yeah, and I mean, dude, they're printing money. They're printing money still. Millions and millions and millions of cases bought each month, opened each month. They are making so much money off the skins. You're not going to do anything to fuck with that. You're not going to take any risks. Oh, yep. you want to have like just slightly better graphics and maybe the thing is if you put it in the Source 2, everybody just thinks like, oh, it's going to update the graphics. It's like, no, you could literally change how the guns shoot, movement, everything. Yep. You don't know. It could impact. It could be a totally new game. It could be a totally new game. And then what happens to your game that's laying you golden eggs right now, relentlessly for years, and you're just printing money off of it by not even creating the skins yourself, by going and letting artists farming it out to artists, and then just being like, I like this one. Oh, what's that? Half the art on it has been stolen from other artists. Oh well, we'll take this other art. So I mean.
If you look at raw revenue, by the way, earned by a game relative to the fact, remember, they didn't even make CSGO. They farmed out to those third-party entities. I guarantee you the actual raw fucking margin on CSGO is one of the greatest in the history of games development ever. Because if people don't know, guys, something like 2 or 3 years into the game, the stat was that they'd made like 2 billion revenue or something mental. This game cannot have cost that much to make and maintain, and they have just made like, at this point, it must be tens of billions, mate. It must be like 10 billion revenue made or something. It's outrageous. The margin is mental on this game. So as you say, if anything, they've proven they're just going to chill like this and sort of let it just keep happening because it's sort of a Midas touch thing. It wasn't intended. It just happened, you know?
Yeah. This is where, you're not going to take any, this is why I've been saying it for months and months and months, where it's just like, listen, guys, if it's such a huge risk to take, the game is copy pasta. The devs know that it's copy pasta. Every time they make any kind of update to the game, it fucks 3 other things up that then they have to go and try and fix. And then that just adds to the copy pasta. So the whole thing is a coding nightmare. Plus you don't want to risk you don't want to risk anything that's going to hit the skin market. So I know that it's something to look forward to, but I wouldn't hold my breath. Of course, if we're proven wrong after all these years of saying it, that would be interesting. But when you're breaking player-based records, once again, another peak set this last week, well above 1.3 million. I mean, dude.
also just don't need it, do we? It's a good game as it is. Like, whoever watches CSGO goes, the graphics aren't good. No one's ever said that. You just watch the bloody game. We've already reached the sweet spot where it just looks good. Let's be real. Like, it just looks good.
It does.
Remember, this game came out 10 years ago. Dude, the graphics still look pretty good if we watch like an ESL broadcast or Blast or something. Looks pretty slick, right?
Well, as far as yeah, no, that's the thing. It still looks good. It's still enjoyable to watch.
Yeah.
The map design gets better and better. I mean, everything gets better and better. So let's lay off the whole Source 2 just for the sake of something new. You know, it's like, oh, we need something new just for the sake of it, even though we don't really need it because everything is going well so far. Unless you're in North America, I've always had you always have to add that caveat, right? Where it's just like it's breaking player base, you know, like peak player records. Except in North America. Sorry, guys. You guys are just shit out of luck.
By the way, you've backdoored your way though into a bigger point there. It's a point Richard often says, but I agree. If you look historically, NA has its dominant periods in most games at the beginning of the game when the game's not super developed, it's not super tactical. You can just play and be good. Maybe Koreans haven't come and it's just all normal players playing. But then after the first few years, they always drop off heavily. Well, part of what that infers as well, which makes sense, is that's also why the orgs in America are always super horny to jump to the next game. So they were the ones, Semmler, that jumped to Valorant really quickly. Because what they thought was, quite cynically but correctly, it's really hard to be the #1 org in CSGO. But in Valorant, if you just lock into the right team, it's all going to be regionalized again. You can have, and this did happen, you had orgs that were tiny, by the way, Semmler, in Valorant, were outplacing like the EGs and the NRGs of the world. So like it actually, if you're cynical and you only care about your org being at the top of the game, that is the pivot you make. Because I have to explain this to people.
Like an Astralis.
No, basically the premise is that's what small orgs have always done in esports, because sponsors, aside from like metrics like raw number of viewership and things like that, because they don't really know the difference between being a champion in FIFA and a champion in Fortnite and a champion in CSGO. To them, all of them are champions, right? What you do, and the best example of this would be like ENCE, is if you're ENCE, right? If you had just a team in League of Legends, CSGO, and Dota 2, you'll never be #1 because you're ENCE. You haven't got the money. But if you're ENCE, what you should do is this: have a team in CSGO, because it's a game you're like not bad in and you love, and then you have like the best StarCraft player. Because it's one player, he doesn't have to be paid the kind of money you have to pay like the biggest star. You don't have to get him simple salary. And because it's one player, if he's the champion in his game, you get to say that you're a world championship org. So like people don't know. Like when I was at SK, we used to do this all the time. If there was ever a time period where League of Legends cost too much, my boss is a genius. He'll just pivot and get some like guy in like a racing car game and now wins everything. So he can go, we still have world champions at SK. It's like that's also part of the business, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, also something that's part of the business that's actually worth talking about, and there's been a bit of a change because we've already touched on majors tonight. Valve won't cover coaches for America's RMR. This is just came out on Dust 2. It's our boy Ryan doing a bit of work. We'll go ahead and I gotta include this in the document because this just came out. So we'll include the link below. But apparently they've made a change where this is Vladislava that actually, who's been a longtime manager and tied into CSGO. And so Vladislava's pointed out that according to Vladislava, Valve has never covered coaches, but rather 6 individuals. Now it seems as though this is only 5 players. So Valve have made the decision to no longer provide additional assistance, because in case you didn't know, Valve do subsidize a lot of costs with the major, helping to finance teams and players and cover a lot of the cost of getting teams and players to the.
It's why it wasn't as crazy
venue.
when they had that story about Bad News Eagles turned down the other org spots, but they knew they had like they'd qualified through the RMR or whatever. Like
exactly,
yeah, exactly. If they really had to pay it themselves, it'd be more of a risk. But as long as Valve like lets you go there, you can technically play without an org. You know.
So this is what it reads out here. This is Dusty was able to look at the information packet provided to all teams attending the Blast.tv Paris Major, America's RMR, and can confirm that coaches attending the RMR in Monterrey, Mexico, might have to pay their own way. According to the packet, Blast will provide and pay for accommodation, flights, visas, and catering for the 5 core members of your roster. Any additional members, including managers, substitutions, or content staff, flights and visas will be organized by Blast at the expense of the team. If you would like to bring additional team members, please provide their details in the team information request form. And accommodation, flights, visas, and catering will be organized for the additional team members, and the cost will be charged back to the team. Upon request of the additional team members, we will provide a quote. So, first off, once again, yet another reminder of if anybody's shocked that Valve aren't doing anything to support the coaches, or like are not particularly inclined to support coaches past allowing them to just be there at all, They've made this abundantly clear time and time again that Valve only care about the 5 players. The rest of it is up to you. You figure it out. So this is still very much in line with Valve's ethos. This also makes me wonder, though, is this Blast also maybe making these changes or influencing this in order to cut corners, in order to try and find every little bit of profitability out of this event as possible?
Crazy idea.
How much of a say does Blast have out of this?
Crazy idea. Maybe Dust2 US, HLTV, and Ryan at Push V could do a bit of what I call journalism and find out.
Oh,
I know they never do, by the way. All they do is report news other people put out there and then just say, like, and put a shitty title on it that's not even appropriate to news publisher. Like, how about do some journalism and find, you know what's great about being a journalist if you are one? You don't have to wait for the news to come out. You can just go and find out yourself. You can just go and ask people directly. By the way, you don't have to have a story. You might have to ask privately. You'd be told privately, look, I can't say this on the record. But then at least you know. That'd be interesting, I'd say. Because as you say, Semmler, this is entirely on brand for Valve. Remember, Valve's approach. They've been going backwards for the last 6 years, guys. In 2016, what happened was some coaches used to literally call the whole game inside the server by standing behind the players on the mic. So what happened was the coaches said to Valve, at majors, since we're calling in the game, can we just have our own PC? And Valve were like, wait a minute, you shouldn't even be calling. Not only do you not get a PC, but now you can't even talk all the time. You can only talk in timeouts. That's step 1. Then step 2 was people were like, the timeouts aren't really enough. Maybe we should be able to talk through freeze time. If you notice, by the way, trying to negotiate with Valve is like trying to negotiate with a mafia don who has all the leverage over you. It gets worse and worse and worse. Like Valve is like fucking Darth Vader when Lando sells all of them out like Han Solo to Vader, and then he's like, what about that? And then Vader's like, pray I do not change the deal further. Like, that's what fucking Valve's like. So then they go, can we at least talk during freeze time? And Valve goes, talk during freeze time? You can't even fucking clap anymore, motherfucker. Don't even smile if something good happens in the game. You're like, where's this going? And at the end, they're just like, in fact, you know what? Don't even turn up at all. You don't exist. Like, what's mad is this is like a reverse slippery slope where they go up at the top and you don't even exist anymore. Like, this is like, look, if we want to do the individual point, do I think this is a bad move? Yeah, in general, because not only is this a case where every team in theory needs a coach nowadays, and as you say, it definitely helps smaller teams. But as I pointed out, if you ever get what I don't want, but Valve does, which is a scene where in theory 5 players, that's not literally what Bad News Eagles are, they have known players, but in theory, if you're Valve, this is a team with no org. They are just 5 players that are so good they have qualified for my World Championship. Okay, but in your case, you're not even then going to fund them or have a coach. Like, they're going to be at an insane disadvantage, dude. They're not going to win. Like, the org pays for the coach, of course. So, like, in this scenario, actually, it just goes against, it's in line with Valve's approach, but I actually think it goes against the core principle they claim to stand for, which is the idea that if you just qualify and you're good enough, it's not about all the esports industry. It's about, are you just good enough at CS to be in the World Championship, you know?
That's always been that's been their way from the beginning. That was one of the first things that they said when they made the ruling on stopping coaches from calling or participating as a 6th man, is that for them, I mean, esports is just marketing. And so when a viewer tunes into the stream, they should be seeing the same thing that they would tune into if they were playing the game. And so it should be 5 players who are, you know, playing the game and competing against one another. And they want it to be as close to that as possible, which is why they keep, you know, walking it back. They just don't want there to be any kind of support staff or anything like that tied behind it. And if you do have that, well, then that is tied to the orgs. I mean, the thing is that this is, if we wanted to put it on like that, you know, this also could be put on Blast though, to an extent, right? Because Blast could very well be shouldering these kinds of costs. You know, it's like, hey, you qualified to our event. Well, we'll cover the coaches then, right? Valve are covering the players. We'll cover the coaches. You know, fair enough. And Blaster over here just like, actually, no. Actually, you know, we'll give you a quote for the cost of you attending our event, but then we're going to charge that money back to you because we're not going to pay for your coaches or your staff or anything like that to come in and participate in our major. So I mean, I feel like there's a little bit of responsibility on Blast side here, where they could have potentially picked up a PR win themselves and said, you know what, hey, listen, there was a change to the support structure. Valve aren't going to be stepping in to support as much as they did in the past, but we'll pick up the slack. You know, they could have got a little bit of love from the community there, and it's certainly quite a bit of loyalty and love from the coaches and players had they gone for that, especially in a time when I mean, you got to find any little edge you can to try to take some market share back from ESL if you're Blast. Like anything you can do if you're Blast to stand out from ESL, you need to be doing. So it feels like a little bit of a missed opportunity, actually, if you think about it, that Blast kind of let one slip through their fingers here for what could have potentially. The question is obviously what would be the total cost of bringing.
It's not going to be cheap, dude.
Coaches, not the manager, not the staff, but just the coach. If you were to cover the cost of the coach, if you were a Blast, I wonder how much that would add to your total profit or to your total costs.
I mean, this is about the RMR, yeah, not the major.
Sure. Yeah, in Monterrey as well.
If it's the RMR, think how many teams we're talking about. Cheap. No, but the amount of teams in the world, that's one player per team, Semmler. Every RMR team, right? Off the top of my head, isn't that going to be like, that's probably like $100,000 right there.
You think it's that much? Hold on.
One player for every RMR team in the world to fly it to the attend and have a hotel. What are you talking about? That'd be thousands per person.
Hold on.
The EU RMR has at least like 24 teams or something, doesn't it? The Americas one's going to have what, like 12 or something like that?
EU RMR. So we're talking about one player. So 24.
It's 24 for Europe.
Hold on.
Remember, all I need to get the number is to 50, and then if it's 2K a person, that's 100K right there. For flight, hotel.
Roughly what? It's going to be roughly like 2K. But then again, I mean, if you're in Mexico, cost shouldn't be that high. You should be able to kind of cut some corners.
No, but here's my point I would make is this is the flaw of what every time in CSGO, we're going to come back to the same position, boys, which go like this. You and me pay nothing. The fan pays nothing. The only people paying for this major is Blast. And then as far as I know, ESL provides like some of the, sorry, not ESL, Valve provides like some of the prize money or something, right? I would go the other way, Semmler. I think like the modern day thing of where Blast gets you all to compete against each other and essentially say like, I can make my people work for twice as little money. Well, I'll do it for twice as little and do it even less days. Well, I'll do even less days and I'll spend even more money on the marketing. I think that's a terrible precedent for esports. What you do is you encourage all these companies to potentially go bankrupt, trying to outdo each other and peacock for Valve. Meanwhile, my whole take's this, Semmler. It's like, surely Valve should be footing nearly all the costs. Like, from our position, here's what it should be. The reason Valve let you do the tournament, Semmler, unlike TI, when in theory they had more control, is because they just don't have the time logistically to run 2 CSGO majors. So in my opinion, the major should just be white labeled. Valve gives you a budget, like whatever it is, $1 million or something. There you go, there's $1 million, spend it in this way. Maybe on top of it, you choose to spend extra from your sponsors. That's fine. But I actually think this whole way they've set up the majors, it's almost like predatory from Valve, dude, because they do encourage these TOs. Because remember, here's the part of fans not thinking. You can't go, well, I'll just budget my major reasonably, because it's a bidding process. So when you budget reasonably and yours is just like the medium-sized major, the other dickhead is incentivized to go, I should spend twice as much and make it grander. So like I say, in a fucked up way, you're like almost like daring these people. You're getting the TOs to play chicken with each other, basically. So even though it means you're going to have things like this that seem very simple, like let's just pay the money and let the coach go. If you're these TOs, you're trying to crush every margin you can. You got to scrape back any money you can. You're going to spend a lot of money on events like this. A lot. So yeah, I feel for the TOs as well.
I mean, the thing is okay, we're talking about 100K here for coaches. Let's say hypothetically,
just a hypothetical
100K for coaches. I mean, now that Blast get a good chunk of that sticker money. I mean, dude, that sticker money is no joke. 100K, you're going to blow through that and no problem at all. You're going to make millions off of the sticker money in theory if you're Blast. So it's like
Blast are the ones who make the money from that.
They get a chunk of the sticker money for sure as the TO. That's how PGL are saying that they're making a profit now off of running majors and ESL and everybody else. So,
yeah, but you know this, Semmler, as well as I do. Valve, PGL says that when they have an event where part of it's in their home country, Romania, country with a way lower economy, with their own staff that they already employ full time, hence they can just tell that guy work twice as much.
That's
the difference between being a Danish company, working with full time staff who have to pay Danish tax and all the things in that country, and then the events in Paris, I don't know. That's the problem. I feel like, again, the margins are just unfair if you're trying to. How are you supposed to compete with PGL or when ESL's using all like fucking Polish staff and you're from Denmark? Yeah. How are you going to do that? Like if people don't know, this is one of the areas behind globalism as to why it's cheap labor that everyone wants moved around the world. Like in this scenario, Blast are using the most expensive labor, domestic Danish people who have to pay all the taxes and the fucking probably like healthcare, all that shit, everything.
It's why DreamHack eventually sold out. I mean, it's why they also sell out eventually. I mean, ESL were able to pivot and get a lot of stuff going over in Poland, so they were obviously able to cut a lot of costs there. But I mean, it's like DreamHack couldn't keep up, Fragbite couldn't keep up. A lot of the TOs, you know, I mean, the only reason Starladder were able to keep up at all is because they were out of Ukraine. So it's like there aren't no rules over there, boys. Anything goes as far as they're concerned. So I mean, it really does. You know, that is one of those advantages, as you say, you know, where you're PGL or somebody like that, if you can pivot and work out of Eastern Europe, well, then you're going to have an advantage over anybody working out of Scandinavia or Western Europe. There's nothing to it. Well, I mean, it's interesting. I'm glad that bit of news actually broke right now, so that we can actually talk about it before the show, because I pretty much want to wrap it up now and get into questions, because I think we have actually quite a few questions tonight.
All right, let's do it.
And also, I mean, big shout out to everybody who's been supporting us. There's a new model now. So before it was Grog Coin, if you wanted to ask questions and support the show. Now, if you want to directly support the show, and not only our show, but also all the other shows that are on the Last Free Nation network, we recommend that you go into there's a link below in the description. If you go to the Discord, and at the top of the Discord, when you show up at the Discord, there's at the top of it says server subscriptions. And by subscribing to the server, it's the best revenue share that we get, and so that's why we went with it. And it goes directly towards supporting all this kind of content, and you also get to ask questions each week. So let's just hop right in. By the numbers questions. Let's get into it, lads. What do we got? All right. I don't know how to pronounce your name. Strong start here. L Tremens, LTRMZ. All right, let's see. You have been asked to be the booker and promoter for a time travel land style event. Ignoring the obvious runtime issues and game build differences for teams, how would you book the following card, and what would be your angles, selling points for the matches? Bloody hell. If it's going to be this involved: main event title match best of 5, number 1 contenders match best of 3, secondary title best of 3, Chargers only exhibition match best of 3, piss break match best of 1.
All right, we'll go one by one then. So what was the first one? The first one's like a champions match or something.
So the main event title match best of 5.
Okay, so essentially what we have to do is create like it's the UFC, but we're making the match. So, right. I mean, at the moment, assuming we're doing it right this second, because, oh, wait, he said a time machine, though, so we can do it in all of history, you mean?
We can do it on all of history of CSGO, I'd say.
Because the problem with this is, like, remember, because he's made it like UFC, part of what the UFC does is they try to make exciting matches. They don't just put, like, the absolute, like there's times number 1 and number 2 don't always fight because it'd just be a boring match and they don't think won't make any money because they've already lost twice or something stupid, you know? Sure. So if we're going all of history, what I'm going to try and do is obviously make, like, the most entertaining match. Well, luckily, I actually do think if you ever watch the Time Travel LAN, the conclusion we came to, which is the grand final, would just be Prime Astralis versus Prime Fnatic. I also think that would be the greatest match, like, because you have on the one hand, like, probably the greatest, like, free-form team where each individual player got to express their genius in Fnatic, play against probably the best structured team ever, where it was the system of Astralis and how they all fit together that made them unbeatable. So if you ever wanted, like, a perfect stylistic matchup, that is like your fucking wrestler against the stand-up guy. Like, that would be, you never know which way that goes. Sometimes the wrestler gets smashed. Sometimes the stand-up guy can't get a punch off. You never know. So I think that would be the title fight. That would be the one you'd want. Because in history, that's the match you want to see as well.
Dude, that is a banger, though. And that would
be amazing.
Both of those. I mean, that was the thing with Peak Fnatic. We called them the hive mind because it's just like, and also that was the crazy thing is they never really calmed either. When you even listen to their comms, they were saying like one word to each other every 10 seconds. It's just like they were all linked like the Zerg or something.
Special chemistry.
Everybody just knew what they needed to do in each clutch situation. It was freaking wild watching those guys. So much fun. Yeah, that'd be sick. That'd be a terrific one. The other one that I would have gone with to go up against like the ultra structure of Astralis, you know, the random team would have been LDCZ. Because again, you know, you can have that kind of just utter randomness that comes in where they're winning rounds that they shouldn't be winning, and that can throw the machine out of whack completely. And then, you know, you wonder if they're tanking it or not. I mean, the LDCZ that actually won a major, that could be an interesting one as well.
Oh man, I always say, even though people know, like, I was sort of a nemesis of his for many years, Happy. The one thing I never disagreed with was his statement that in like 2015 or whatever, they like broke the meta. They did.
They did break that meta, yeah.
Like there was a reason they were amazing. Like they actually were. They just went completely counter to everything we thought about Counter-Strike. Like they did just force buy all the time. It's just they had the lineup that could make it work. So no, you're sort of right. If you wanted to have like the ultimate, like in this case, it'd be almost like the ultimate banana peel for Astralis to step on. That would be
there you go.
You know.
All right, number 1 contenders match, best of 3.
So the idea here is this is like a different matchup of really strong teams that should be really great. So I think for this one, logically, since I'm not just going to use the same teams every time, I think what I would love to see, this is an interesting take, no one will have this one before, is what I would love to see is obviously people might know Virtus Pro, the old Polish lineup. Almost every match they play is a classic, right? So here's what I would like to put against them, because this is someone that they never faced. The timeline just didn't work out. I would like to have them play against one of the lineups of Na'Vi when Simple was goated. Because the best thing about VP, I always thought, was as a team, they could almost withstand like superstar players because they just didn't give a fuck, did they? They just played their game. They're always in the match. I want to see, because if you remember, the era when they fell off was towards the end of 2017. That was when Simple's Na'Vi got like better and eventually became good. So we never actually got to see what would they do against the GOAT? What if Simple was just snapping completely? Because if any team could stand against it, surely VP's the one with like they're like the guy in the UFC, Semmler, who just never goes down. You know, they can just take an infinite beating. They're always in the fight. They're going to come back strong in round 5, you know.
They always had the epic ones, but it would have to be what, like 2014 VP?
Oh, it'd have to be them at their prime, yes. Their absolute prime. We want like Pasha really sick, Snacks
that would be
mega.
sick. Yeah, Snacks the Madman just all lurking through smokes everywhere. Okay, I'm on board with that one. Secondary title best of 3. Again, so this would just be secondary title best of 3. So this would be, I guess, a female league. Is that isn't that how the UFC works, where they have the female cards that get in there?
Oh, maybe he means like different weight class, like or whatever. So.
Oh, okay, different weight class. Well, I mean, again, female league. I mean, what can we have?
All right, here's the analogy for that one. If we're going to do a different way, here's my version of different weight. We'll just have an NA match. So we'll have like the greatest EG versus the greatest Team Liquid lineups. Or short. Here's one for you. Here's it for Semmler. Here's what we would do, obviously. Even though sadly there's a player shared, they might have got a time machine. We'll have Cloud9 that won the major play Team Liquid Grand Slam. King of NA match. That's pretty good. Now look, there's going to be 2 Stewies in it, but whatever. We'll make that work. It'd be like Spider-Man or something. Don't worry.
Yeah. Okay. I see how you're going with that one.
Was that it? I think that's it, right? We did the whole card there.
That's it. We could go with that. Absolutely. That would be a banger. And then you play that one in MLG Columbus Arena and just see how it goes. Chargers only exhibition match, best of 3. Chargers.
Who the fuck knows who'd be good at that? You can't know, can you? You'd have to be someone from like 2000 or 2001, wouldn't it? So
Chargers only is like how many rounds can you get done in the allotted period of time, right?
It's just only the T rounds count.
It's only the T rounds count. Only the T rounds count. But I thought you have to do it within a specific amount of time.
Yeah, what happens is we both play 20 minutes, and at the end, the one with the most T rounds won. Because essentially, if you don't know what makes that format fun, is think about it, right? It's how the second half of the game plays. So if in the first half, Semmler, we play, I'll give you a random map, Overpass, and for 20 minutes, you get 7 T rounds. Yeah. That means if when I start my T side, and in the first 5 minutes, I get like 5 rounds, it's going to be really exciting for the next 15 minutes, because if you hold me off somehow, it'll be the greatest. Like, you'll feel it. It's like in the NFL where you just do all those fucking third down stops and the guy never scores and you stop him at the goal. It feels fucking epic. So it's why it can be, if it works, a very interesting format.
Yeah. That would be sick. Chargers only exhibition match best of 3 though. Okay, so who knows for that one? You can pick 2 for that. Who gives a fuck? No, I mean, it's just like the who has been. I feel like you'd almost need to have some crazy.
I mean, by that logic, pick people who got on T side, I guess, right?
We could still go for like LDCZ or Fnatic in that sort of scenario, just because they would be so dangerous with pistols, or anybody today, I guess.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Piss break match, best of 1, i.e. current day EG versus Indian CS team Wolf from Cologne 2014. I think you kind of.
He doesn't know it, but the reason that would be extra based is because do you know who coached Wolf in 2014?
No.
Kassad.
Really? How do you have that bit of information off the top of your head?
He told me that in an interview months ago. So don't.
Okay. I was about to say, like, dude, you're remembering that?
Don't worry about it.
Holy shit! The esports historian coming in from the top rope with the goods.
Oh, the joke I always say, Semmler, is, when they always go, anyone could just look it up. I'm not looking it up, you idiot. The joke is you look it up by asking me. I'm not looking at it. Anyone could just look at it. I wrote that fucking book, essentially, you moron. That would be basically, that's like you saying to God, well, anyone could just read the Bible. Go, I wrote the Bible. What are you talking about? I had to do it first for you to do that, didn't I? Think it through. It doesn't make sense, your argument, guys. I am esports.
All right, let's see. Undercard best of 3 for tier 2 teams. Last one. Undercard best of 3 for tier 2 teams. This is actually kind of turned into like fucking 5 questions, though.
Yeah, fuck that. Just skip to the next one.
All right, VG man. Have y'all ever been or would go skydiving? I have
No.
not.
No.
I have never been, I don't think I would either.
Problem
Just-
for me is like, even though I'm sure it's not as dangerous as you imagine, I just don't see like that. To me, whatever the upside is, the thrill, I don't feel like it's worth the potential downside of dying. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's lots of other
I've
things in
done-
life
I've
I'd rather
done,
take chances
like,
on, except for that. You know,
The thing that I can compare to is that I've done like big wall climbs where I've been a couple hundred meters up on a wall. And
should still had a rope and harness on though, right?
yeah, rope and harness. I'm not
Yeah,
fucking
exactly.
I'm not like Alex Honnold or some shit. Well, like that's probably like that kind of experience where it's like you look back, you look down. It's like, yeah, okay, there's a bit of air here. There's a bit of air between you and the ground. It's a trip. But then when you're just cruising, you're not really thinking about any of that. And I guess maybe in skydiving, like once you're in the moment, you're in the moment and you're not really thinking about it. I mean, you're pretty committed at that point. I have been what is it to where you know, it's like the big sail and you kind of like, you're not jumping out of a plane, but you launch yourself off a cliff and you kind of just go on the wind that's coming up the side. You know what I mean? Parasailing or whatever.
Where you hold
been
on to like a
parasailing.
bar and it just flies with like a really
not that
big
one, but
kite
the
thing.
same vibe where it's
Right,
like the big
okay.
one, the big sail. And so we did that and there wasn't enough wind. So I weighed too much. There wasn't enough wind. So like we had to go down early, which kind of blew. But at the same time, it was totally cool, totally legit, except that not so much for the other guy who was next to us because his sail got attacked by a hawk. Because apparently we went through the hawks are territorial, and so apparently we must have gone through this place's nest or this place's territory. Because all of a sudden they're like, we need to go down now because this fucking hawk. We get to the bottom and we see that they left a giant rent in the sail. So you're like, that could have ended really poorly. So yeah, no, for reasons like that, like completely out of your control, you could have a really bad day. So yeah, not so much. Divorce lives in Lucky's shadow. Have you ever seen gameplay of or shown interest in competitive melee games like Mordhau? Rumor has it the devs ruined the esports despite the huge competitive community, denied an ESL offer for an event, which is really sad since the fencing in the game looks amazing to spectate and is really fun to improve in as a player.
What's
Do you
this
think
game called?
Mordhau?
How do you?
It's
spell
like
that?
I think I've watched a little bit of streaming of it where it's like you're fighting with swords. It's like you're first person fighting with swords, stuff like that.
Okay. I just don't know fuck all about it, mate.
Nah, neither do I.
It doesn't sound like
I've-
my thing.
I've watched maybe 5 minutes of a stream total of this, and I mean,
But you never
Sure,
get
I'm-
guns at all. It's just essentially like an FPS game with swords.
yeah, it's like
Oh,
first person
you have
combat.
archery to be fair. Okay, there is actually some.
There is archery in it. Okay, but
Okay.
it's essentially just like
Apparently.
full on PvP first person combat where you're like parrying and swinging and you have to time shit. And
Okay.
I mean,
Sounds
at that
alright.
point, I would just say if you're into that kind of jam, just go watch some fencing. There's competitive fencing, there's kendo, there's all sorts of different stuff out there for that sort of thing. I'd probably go and get off your ass and go and do some fencing if you're interested in it. Do the real thing. But hey, Lunar Word Herd. Which of these two, in your opinion, is more likely to be true? The Big Bang Theory or the creation story, Genesis? If you believe neither, what theory of the origin of the world universe do you think is most likely to be true? I've pretty much landed completely on the creation theory. I feel like there is a creative force, creative intelligence that created all things. Long story short.
I mean, wasn't
Big
the
Bang-
question though, which is less likely or something though? Wasn't
Which of these is more likely to be true? But
Right, well, here's the problem,
Why
right?
is the Big Bang Theory? Because isn't the Big Bang Theory also isn't that tied into the creation story in the sense that one doesn't negate the other?
No, because I assume he means that he thinks the Big Bang is like if there is no God, and then creation is someone created and there is no Big Bang. That's what it's implying, right? The problem with this question is it's counterintuitive because almost everyone listening is going to think it's a trick question, and obviously, like the Big Bang's more likely. But actually, if you think about it from a purely logical perspective, the Big Bang is the least likely possible theory of any kind of creation myth possible to construct because it genuinely says everything that exists now always existed, but in the smallest possible space in a way you can't even conceive of. And then for no reason, because we have no reason we can assign to it, just stopped being in that form, came into this form, and in doing so, they even claim that the rules of like physics and stuff weren't the same before. Again, how would you ever prove on all these things? Like, and don't answer, by the way, that's a rhetorical question. I don't want someone to get, well, what you do is you look at the red shift, like you're just saying things other people told you in books, Emma. You don't know anything about what you're talking about. So all I'll say is that, like, you can believe it if you want. People can believe all sorts of things. I just think by definition, as much as you might think the creation one's unlikely, you might have a hard time with it. The Big Bang one is almost by definition the most unlikely, which doesn't, it's not even a statement that didn't happen. I'm just saying, if you think about it, I come up with a crazier story than that.
Wasn't this this one was determined because the universe, or at least what is known of the universe, is still expanding, so it would have had to have originated from a point. Isn't that the whole thing? Like, what led back to this? That's what they
claim, mate.
That's what they claim. I mean, the one is that if there was a creator, then, you know, like, it would have to come from nothing. He would have to exist. He would have to transcend time and space and be outside of any of it in order to
maybe.
In order for, go ahead.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Here's one thing I've never understood. There's two things I'll say to this. One goes like this. One is when someone says like likely. Well, the problem with the creator one is that immediately takes likelihood out because it's not involved with probability, is it? The idea of the Big Bang one is like, you know, anything could happen and this happened to be what it took place. Therefore, what was the likelihood that would be the outcome? If there was a creator, then it did go that way or it didn't. And the worst thing if there's a creator, remember, is it might not even be the case that you even have a way of conceiving of what they thought or what they did or why they did it, or if what they did was what they said. And then the last thing I'd say on that one is, let me think. It's what you were saying at the end there. Fuck, what was my point on that? Let me think. What was the point you were just making?
Transcending time and space outside of everything, and he would eventually have to start it.
Oh no, that was it. I think the flaw with this entire way of thinking goes like this. Right. This is one area I know average people cannot conceive of concepts in physics. So, you know, everyone loves to tout the second law of thermodynamics, like energy cannot be created or destroyed. It is merely transformed. Sure. That implies that nothing was ever created. That implies everything just always was and just keeps changing between states. Right. But here's how I know you all can't think that, because as Semmler pointed out, you all have to then hook that idea into the idea that there was a story that started on day one with 0, expanded out, and even worse, notice how it's like a human story. It's going somewhere, Semmler. You know, there's going to be an end to the movie, but it has to continue. Like it instead, to me, one of the reasons I've always found like Hindu philosophy quite interesting is, if you know, their metaphors essentially are the underpinning of a philosophy that basically goes, the universe seems to be like an infinite thing that just like happens, and they describe it like a flower. It's like it blossoms out like a flower, and then it withers back in and goes back to nothing, and it blossoms out like this. And the idea is you're just in one of any number of like it going out, and then it's going to go back in, and everything will go away, and then there'll be another one. Even though, yeah, the point in that one is, what you have to just ask yourself is this question is, because of your life where you assume that you had a beginning point, it feels like everything else must have, but why must it have? Why can it not be that, like, I don't even personally know what a human is, so why can it not be that whatever the realm you're in, maybe it's just always existed, or maybe some variant does, or maybe it's something that happens that goes away, then another one comes back. You know, it's all based on the idea when you come back to that original thing of like the universe, it was created, it's going somewhere. That's you. You came out of nowhere. You are going somewhere. You're going to be gone one day. Like, I think people, what they do in real life, Semmler, for real, is they take actually things that make sense only to humans and they apply them to the world. So you might have heard there's a famous concept that if you ever observe a fetus when it's in the womb, it looks like it does the story of what they say happened with all animals in evolution. It looks like it's like a little fish thing, goes into like a reptile, becomes a little bit mammal-like, starts to get more and more and more like a human, and then eventually even comes out of the water and comes onto the fucking like bro, that's just the story they tell you of evolution. So the premise goes, I actually think the best way you trick a human is you take something that inherent to them innately makes sense because it is who they are and their story, and you just say that's what was going on in the world. And in your brain you go, yeah, that seems familiar. It's like they just tricked you with your own story, mate. It's a pretty good angle, isn't it? It's a pretty good one.
It is. Especially if you want, I mean, like I think I was listening to, were you talking with Charles Carroll? I think there was a point where
it's on my side channel.
The point was made on Thorin's side. I highly recommend go and listen. So much good content there. But where it's a circle essentially. So, you know, the way that we keep putting it, like you just said, is it's all on a straight line, and so, you know, it's all linear, and it's like there's a start and a finish and all that. But that if let's say, for example, this intelligence transcends time and space and is present in the past, present and future, and is present everywhere at all times, well then, you know, he would already, like, it's all just this is where you could be at anywhere on the circle at that point. It doesn't matter. Like, it's like, oh, Christ is coming back. Well, it's in this theory, he's already back. Like, it's just, it's all over, right? It's all over the place in that circle. It's not on a linear line where it's like start and finish.
It's like he can pick up a book
that to be fascinating.
and he already knows what happens because he wrote the book, and he can just go back to a different chapter and go, you know what, I'm going to replay chapter 2. And if you did that, by the way, if you were creating a story, this is what fans don't think about Semmler. Everyone goes, why do bad things happen to good people? What story would be good if nothing happened out the gate? It was just everything was great. Like, you have to have the tension build up. You have to have the points of crisis where you prove yourself. Like, that's all your life is, All
right, moving on. Kavora, how the fuck am I supposed to have integrity when by paying tax, especially income tax, I am allowing a corrupt organization to steal from me?
The reason I say miss me goes like this.
I can't tell if Kavora's name is glowing or not.
The reason that I say miss me is because I've heard these shit arguments a million times. They only come from one type of person. They come from someone who, what he really means there is, I'm not interested in integrity, Semmler. So since here's a very minor way in which, even though it's not really a good faith argument, you're not 100% perfect, Semmler, I don't have to do anything in my life now because you're not perfect. Therefore, like, you're invalidated. Like, by that logic, right? Why do anything? Because there's going to be some small negative consequences.
Is
like,
this
the point there is
that we're going to keep circling down around.
The point there is like, if you could somehow live a perfect life and not contribute to fucked up governments and what, you'd do it if you could. Still do your best though, eh? Still do your best, no matter what. Because, by the way, the logical solution there, this is how I know it's not a good faith argument, is if it was a good faith argument, it'd be someone who was seeking to have pure integrity, Semmler, and he's genuinely asking us, how do I do this? Well, okay, here's the answer then. Like Semmler said, the answer's obvious. You have to disconnect completely from society, go off the grid, give up all possessions, don't ever interact with any humans who interact in the current system, especially not with money and modern currencies, because those things are all interconnected. Now, you could go do that. It's going to be an extremely hard life, and you're also going to have a really hard time finding other people to live that life with. Point is, I don't think you ever really cared about living with integrity. So to rewind, here's a better question. In a world where it might be functionally impossible to live with perfect integrity, isn't it still worth doing our best and doing our best every time we can? And especially where it's not even necessary in any way to be an arsehole, let's have integrity and be cool people. Wouldn't that be a good argument?
Yeah, that'd probably be the best. I mean, given a choice, right? Especially given a choice, what the whole point that he makes is flawed from the beginning, because you're saying, well, you have no choice. You have no choice when it comes to that.
Yeah, you always have a choice. Yeah, you're right.
Your freedom is forfeit. So it's a moot point. It's like, okay, yeah, don't do that, but look, we'll see how long you last. It's silly. So yeah, Kavora. The memes. All right, Snake Gold. Do you have a method to stop procrastinating?
You have one? You're pretty good at like doing stuff you want to do.
I mean, I'm pretty like the thing is that I'm pretty good at doing stuff that I want to do, but I almost always I'm addicted. This is what the conclusion that I'm coming to is that I'm addicted to having at least one form of anxiety going, and so I will always have at least one thing. Like I could have, dude. If I think about it, it's like I've had such a blessed, privileged life. But I've always had to fuck it up somehow. Like there has to be something hanging over me that's ready to just blow up and fuck everything up, and I won't do anything to solve that problem. Like it'll just sit there, and then eventually it'll be the most painful thing possible. Because when the pain gets too much, I'll finally address that, only for there to be the next thing that I'm going to let sit on the fire until it starts getting red hot, and then I find so I'm caught in this perpetual cycle of allowing it to be like red hot pain, and then only when the pain gets unbearable, I'll fix the problem. And then rinse and repeat. That's me in a fucking nutshell. So, dude, I literally just bought a book that I'm hoping will, help to give me an answer for how to solve this problem. But I don't know. Do you have anything to go off of it? Because for like the little things, I mean, sure. But procrastination in general, I mean, you gotta nut up and get it done at the end of the day. But I don't know. What's your take on this situation?
I mean, I've recommended previously to people, there's a book, it's just an airport book. Like once you read the first 4 chapters, you know everything about it. But there's a book called The One Thing that I actually found very useful, because what it basically is it's just a way of making lists that is way more efficient. So the problem essentially goes like this. I'll even give people the secret right now. When you make a to-do list, Semmler, the problem most people have is it's not ordered. It's just a list of things to do. So here's how it goes when you make a to-do list. It goes like this, Semmler. Do my tax return, paint the shed, And then it goes like, pick up some mints, watch this TV show, right? Well, if you just put those things on your to-do list, your brain's
all
going to
things are the
go,
same.
pick up the mints, watch the TV show. I got 2 out of 4 done, didn't get to the others. Well, actually, the most important thing on your list was probably like do the tax return, wasn't it? So if instead you did your list like this, number 1, do the tax return. Number 2, pick this thing up. Number 3, mints. 4, TV show. And you go, right, I always start at number 1, and that's the first thing I do on my day. Then you can't fail in life because every day you're going to get the most important thing done. And so my analogy goes like this. It's even brilliant because when you see how powerful it is to identify the most important thing and crucially, do it first before you've spent your energy, before you've had your caffeine high, before your sugar's been up and down. When you do it at the beginning of the day with all your energy and your day ahead of you, the reason why you become unbeatable goes like this. If you just do the most important thing each day, most people don't. Most people put off the most important thing. So just doing the important thing a day, one thing a day, you will already be mega successful, I guarantee. Because think about it, every week you get 7 things done that were most important. Now, mate, if you could do the top 3 on your list, you will become an insanely high performer. You will be beating all, and mate, if you could ever get like more like 5, 7 items, you'll be a god. You will actually be a god. Because what people don't understand, metaphorically, obviously, what people don't understand is how much we all procrastinate, how little we actually have to even work. Like beyond when you engage yourself, like we're doing like a 3-hour show now. Aside from that, like there are so many hours in a day that we all just waste on stupid shit, social media, reading nonsense, like just distraction. So to me, it's more about just like it. The problem is you think to yourself, this is why I think people don't want to get over procrastination. Well, I'd have to become someone who just likes working 10 hours a day. No, what you have to do is this. You have to figure out what's the best way you could use the 4 good hours everyone gets in a day. I don't care how out of shape you are, how bad your diet, everyone has 4 hours a day they could do some work. If you were to put those 4 hours, in this case, maybe it's even 1 or 2, to the most important end each day, you will be unbeatable, I'll tell you. It's one of the ways I've like leveled some of my productivity up. Because I'd gotten to the point where I'd already done 1 million video bullets. I was like, I don't have any more time. I have to make it more efficient. I have to find, in fact, I even have to steal time back to have a life, but it hasn't affected my productivity, stuff I do, because I just changed the order I do things in. So yeah, that's a little pro tip there. It's a real technique you can use. The key thing though, like I said, is you've got to be brutally honest with the order of the list though. Don't ever lie. Exactly. Don't ever put the thing you know is really hard, number 5. You have to make yourself put it number 1. Because if you do, this approach works, I'm telling you.
Well, there you go. Now you sold me. I'm going to start doing this. It hadn't occurred to me because it's like I've done the lists too. Like, dude, when you're describing that, I'm just sitting here like, yes, because it's exactly that trick where it's just like, but I've done my Swedish lesson, but that was the easy one.
I mean, you know that book I told you, the one, The War of Art.
Yeah.
It's the same concept. The real thing you're learning is this. The genius of that book that makes it a compelling read is that what he does is he externalizes the concept of everything that would make you not want to do work as a force that he calls resistance. And so he allows you to mentally frame it as like, these are techniques that counteract this force of resistance that makes you want to put off doing work. And what he crucially nails in that book is that it isn't anyone external to you. That's the excuse you make. It's always you. It's always you convincing another part of your mind, all the things he says that it tells you, let's do it tomorrow, you'll do a better job. Tell you what, you're tired at the moment. Get a good start first. It tells you anything that it can tell you to make you not do the work today. So once you know that, essentially what I'm getting to is all your own problems largely are you getting in your own way. So you just have to find techniques that get you out of your own way, as it were.
All right, let's get into the next one. I love it. That was a fantastic answer. All right, Snake Gold. No, not Snake Gold. Hey, Jerky's minion. If Kassad was in a mosh pit and EG executives were also there, who else do you think of the CS talent would also join into the pit to give a good moshing to the EG executives?
Okay. The reason that's actually genius is obviously it sounds like we're saying beat them up, but we're just in a mosh pit. They're in there as well, willingly. Yeah. So everyone's just bouncing off each other.
In a game of Minecraft.
I mean, obviously, Richard Lewis and Yanko have got to chuck in there, surely, immediately. Wouldn't they be right there?
Oh, dude. Yeah.
You'd have, remember, it would be so Richard's a boomer.
So, imagine, he's already the king of hell in the cell. Now he could be king of the mosh pit as well. Mate,
Richard would just rock up immediately. He'd have put a request in. It'd be like, the body's hit the floor. And they'd just come in, just going mental like that.
I think you nailed it. Because what else? Hold on. Who else? Oh no, would I Stan? I was thinking like for whatever reason, if I was thinking about a player, I'd have put Stan in there. Stan is
No,
not
he's
in
still
there.
in EG.
He's still in EG.
He's in one of
but,
the
like,
smaller teams.
I feel like he's gotten jerked around a few times in the past. Maybe it hasn't all worked out the way that he hoped it did. I'm sure he's got some steam he needs to blow off. So for Stan's sake, I'll put him in there. Okay, Kaike. Who are your all-time favorite StarCraft and StarCraft 2 players?
I mean,
Ooh.
StarCraft Brood War was my jam, so for that one, it's easy. Like,
Okay, who
Bisu
was
was
it?
one of my all-time favorites. The Protoss player, he was really, really amazing. He had like unbelievable micro. I always was a big Flash fan. It's just obvious to say now because he's like the fucking goat of the game.
Sure,
If I had to pick like a more obscure one, I'd maybe say like let me think. Who's like a really fun one to pick? I mean, if we go like old school players, I love that guy called I Love Uv, who was like a Terran player, and his whole thing was he didn't even have good micro. He just had amazing macro, and he just out macroed you the whole game. And so the joke was you could win all this like micro fights, and he just won because he was just producing infinite troops the whole time and like secret bases. Oh, he was like a chess player basically. He had like a really interesting mind.
style. Yeah, that's.
What about StarCraft 2? Who were your favorites?
Yeah, exactly. StarCraft 2, but the thing is for me, like StarCraft 2, it's really I was always I actually so a friend of mine has been logging all of the VODs since the beginning, basically. Like I didn't even know, but he has VODs from original GSL, like the first season of GSL. And he gave me access to check this out. And so
I think the person who's without saying the name, I think
Yeah.
the person might actually be a guy on my Discord server because he
I think so.
offered me the same access.
But dude, I have not grinned as much in so long because I just literally sat there and the first game I put on was Idra's first match in GSL.
All right, okay.
Because I was an Idra fanboy like through and through.
Sure.
I watched all of the matches. I mean, if I were to go on about pros that I always wanted to watch play, it was Idra and it was Naniwa.
Sure.
Just loved watching him play. Idra because he was just endless entertainment. He had the bad boy attitude, but he was also good in a macro sense. I played Zerg. He played Zerg. He was always pushing this meta. I wanted to do that meta. So and then he was also in Korea. He was also competing in GSL. He was really, trying to push it there. And same thing for Nani. And the funny thing is that Naniwa now hangs out in my stream almost every morning. It's such a trip, like to have Naniwa just chilling out in my stream shooting the shit. It is a real like fanboy moment.
Right. The other reason why it's actually good that his pro career ended when it did is he would 100% have been one of the people cancelled. Like the whole reason it doesn't surprise me is in your stream, mate, is he's very much more in like our worldview than normal esports people. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, he's great. He's awesome. But watching him compete back in the day. Him and Idra, man, I pretty much watched all of their matches. So it's very, those are fond memories. Also, I mean, more so. I mean, there was always Stefano, right, to root for as well, just because he really figured out how to set up the roach timing that just cracked everything open, and also how to macro efficiently with Zerg. Like he really, threw some tricks in there that I think really stepped the game up, and so he was always really fun to watch. Stefano was always there. These days, I'm more. I just kind of watch the big tournaments, and these days it's not. I'm not as attached to individual players. I'll just watch the big tournaments and see like what's going on, and then I'll watch Euthermal content because Euthermal is a mad lad. He's just creating the best content on YouTube right now. So if you haven't, go check out some Euthermal content. He comes up with crazy builds. He's really fun and entertaining to watch. So well worth your time there. All right, T-Dans, what are your thoughts on speedrunning and its role within esports?
How is it even an esport?
Exactly. This is one of those things where it's just like
just a community thing.
Not everything needs to be an esport.
No, exactly.
Like not everything needs to be competitive in that sense. It's like competitive within your community, but then it's like you have to have all of these modifiers where it's like any percent, and then you're using this bug, and you're not allowed to use this bug, and blah blah. And it's way too nitty gritty, and it's way too. I mean, it's really appealing to that particular community, and you guys run your thing and have your thing, and it's awesome. Exactly. But do we need to turn everything into some kind of community thing or like competitive thing like that in the sense that it's an esport that needs to be televised? I don't think so. It never really crossed my mind for speedrunning at all. What do you think?
I mean, look, within esports games, like in Quake Famous, they had all those movies of speedruns. Like that's vaguely associated with esports, but even then, none of those people are playing professionally. There's no tournaments. Like it's just a fun online niche thing. Like I say, it's like you say, Mate, as soon as someone desperately needs something to be A, mainstream, or B, like part of some movement, it's like you're doing it for some reason other than the game now. Like, it's like that's your shitty identity, or that's who you need to, like, I don't need it, mate. You know what I mean? Like, no, it ain't an e-sport. Who gives a shit?
All right. Franny boy, as a child, did you ever believe in Santa, the Easter Bunny, or similar figures? Yeah. Santa, dude, come on. Yes, absolutely. We used to rig, dude, we'd set up all sorts of, like, each year we'd rig more and more complex traps to catch Santa, to like figure, it'd be like trip lines that were tied to tin cans that were empty. Like, dude, we were coming up with all sorts of stuff. Like, basically, I have no idea how my parents were able to put any presents out because we rigged like
Mission
so many.
Impossible.
There's so many, like, I'm surprised we didn't come with like punji sticks or something, to just try and get them, because we had every sort of trap just rigged throughout the living room and everything, trying to make it so we could catch Santa, and we never caught him, of course. So props to my parents for actually being able to figure out how to get around those traps, when they were drunk at 2 a.m, putting the presents out after Christmas dinner. Did you have any of
that
those?
question is, like, in a sense, yes, I did. But I also think as soon as you say like believe and you talk about little kids, I think you're not really talking about the same thing as we think of as belief when you're an adult. Like, the whole thing about being a little kid is the reason you can play with no toys is it is vividly real in your imagination. So in a way, like, I did, but I also think we all believe, like, the joke is we all believed like TV characters were real and stuff when we were like 5 or something, like.
Well, this is a total aside, actually. This is like a total side topic, but do you think that do you think that the constant entertainment, okay, how to put this, right? This new generation of kids who are being raised with screens, who are being raised with perpetual entertainment in the sense that they will always have a phone or an iPad or a TV or something, is going to significantly stunt that kind of imagination of just, hey, be bored and go play with a stick. Like, and create something out of your imagination. The same way that we were saying that Lego, it used to be that Lego, you just got a box and it was different blocks. There was no like, this is the Star Wars, box set or whatever the fuck. It was just like, no, here's a bunch of blocks, make something out of it, imagine it, make something real out of it. Do you think that we're going to be running into an issue where imagination is just going to be completely stunted because you're just going to be raised with the screen, and so you're never going to actually have to work on that skill of imagining anything as a kid these days?
I mean, as far as I can tell, it's not like, is that going to happen? Aren't we like 10 years too late already? Like, it's over. It's already over.
Yeah.
Like, as far as I know, when people have looked into topics like this, like, what happens if instead of learning to draw and to do things from your imagination and make up story, if instead you are given a story, you are given a set of characters, you are given a screen to watch and play. I think as far as I know, when they've looked into that, it does literally limit people's development, like you're talking about. Like, they don't become the same creative individuals they would otherwise. Like, but the problem is, though, it's all gradiated though. Like, for example, I know someone once made a point that, like, this happened in another junction like this in the past, was when you were a kid in the past, the first way you would encounter something creative is like a book, for example. So you'd be reading immediately, you'd be engaging your mind's eye. Like, already TV was taking that up 50, 70, 80 years ago, right? So to me, it's a more extreme version now of what's always been happening that was probably making society decay, I imagine, Now
it's just accelerated.
I mean, I'll give you an example as a very quick aside. I've told this story before, but just to give people an example of how hard it is to put yourself outside of a situation you've been conditioned to live in. I remember someone telling me that back in the day, obviously, like, if you ever went to a pub in England back in the day, it was all men who just got off work, right? That's the whole thing you do. You go and you blow off for some steam, have a few drinks with boys before you go home to your wife and family, right? And when you would go there was no music because there wasn't a live band. So unless it was the rare time, like once a week, you have like a live band come and play, it's just people, the sound, it's like the background ambient sound of people talking. Like, what about this? And then you'll go down, another pipe, please. And so all you did in the pub was talk. It was a social thing, Samuel. You would sit there, you talk to your friend, you'd meet a guy you don't know. If you're in a village, you'd meet the old guy or your dad's dad or an uncle or you'd have all these convos. And also, that's why, by the way, you'd be talking about things like politics, but you'd be talking like, right, what are we going to do about this? Are we going to vote this guy in? And there would be like an active component. And then he said, what happened was when the jukebox came along, all of a sudden everyone just sat drinking and you could only talk to the person next to you, and all that conversation went away and it just became drinking, passively consuming entertainment, and it just gradually went down. So the point is, in society, as far as I can tell, these are very wrong trends. It's just that we're noticing, like, we're on the cutting edge of it, aren't we? So to us, it's really extreme. And I think it is extreme what the effect would be, because you can see already, by the way, in that analogy there, essentially just putting a jukebox into a pub, Semmler, completely destroys like people politically uprising against you, having big conversations, knowing each other very well. Like it's amazing the effect that like small thing could have. Because like I say, now if you've been to a pub an hour, it's impossible to imagine it without like a TV and a jukebox and fucking music playing. Like that just goes without saying.
Not even just music playing, but music blasting, making
exactly.
it difficult to just have a
Obnoxiously loud.
conversation, even with the people sitting at your table or standing next to you at the bar. You have to shout, so you're only going to be able to have a conversation for so long before it just gets annoying. It gets tiresome. Yeah, no, this is that's a fascinating. Like, I'm really interested in one. Maybe we'll have like a tangent one of these days where you can kind of relate a bit more of that, because I'm really interested in that kind of that aspect of the like the British culture where you come from, where there was that kind of pub background, that kind of direct tie, because that's something that that's a bit of like a bit of context that I'm completely lacking.
No, it surprised me. I didn't know it at all. I never even thought about it, you know. Because remember, this is, I'll give you one last based detail. This might actually blow the viewers' minds. This is why it is significant what they put in current day TV shows that purport to be about the past. Because the reason why, by the way, guys, it probably blew your mind when I made that point, is if you ever watched a show like The Witcher and they were in a tavern, it's going to be a guy playing music as if it was a jukebox every fucking time. In the background, they'll all even be playing like some fake version of a modern song, and then they all stop as everyone goes through. That wouldn't even be there. That would be so rare that it'd be a live music act. But it just shows how, even because one of the things you have to understand, guys, is they use the modern day fiction not just to tell you a story about something imaginary, but to infer something about what's currently going on in the world. It's a very clever way to sort of prime certain ideas in the world, you know.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. All right. Let's see. As a child, no. Blaz, would you say that the newer CS maps aren't as great as the older ones? If so, what would you say is the main thing that they lack or do wrong that makes the classics so great? Again, at least my quick answer to this one would be, once again, just the step after step making each map 50-50, where you no longer have clear, heavily CT or T-sided maps where you really had to develop and have a strength you could lean into. Now it really is, it's 9-6, 8-7 every time, and it just promotes these 30 round long maps. I really wish that we could have decisively CT-sided maps again, like Old Nuke, or even T-sided maps like Old Dust 2. But you can't have that anymore. It all has to be 50-50, 8-7 down the middle, and I'm not a huge fan of that, because from a casting perspective, this is actually coming back to a point that we were talking about earlier, right, with Chargers Only, where if a comeback starts happening, you're just like, holy shit, like there's like hype and story that you can build around certain situations that I think it's kind of harder to do now, because it's so tempered with it's an 8-7, but it's not a loss. It's basically par for the course, right? It's not as gripping. But maybe I'm just looking at the past through rose tinted glasses. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I think one of the problems they've had with a lot of the newer maps is it almost feels like they try to be like totally unique compared to other maps, but to too much of a degree. So if you think about like of the most recent maps, so we obviously in the order, it went in reverse order. Anubis recently, Ancient before that, and then Vertigo before that, right? Take Anubis out of it, because actually Anubis doesn't fit that. That's an outlier. Anubis is just a classic style CS map. Like it could be Mirage or Dust 2. It's a similar setup. You know exactly what you're doing. That's why I think that map from day one has played pretty decently. But if you look at the maps like Vertigo and Ancient, they're just super bizarre. Like Ancient is just really like wide, and it's got all those weird walls, and there's like a couple of choke points. Vertigo is just this weird vertical map where it's very small. Like my problem with those maps is they're too gimmicky. It's why everyone says about those two maps, Vertigo was just like fucking take A simulator, and then fucking Ancient was like retake A simulator. You know what I mean? Like it was like the joke was it was the same dynamic playing out over and over and over and over and over again. Whereas as much as like the Anubis map doesn't look amazing, but at least it like immediately plays, like I say, like a Mirage. Like you can immediately start getting a good game. You don't have to have the most crazy tactics. There's some depth on it. There's also some simple play elements. So I think in general in Counter-Strike that's what's made the maps not as good. They've almost gone for like these totally out there ones, whereas the best CS maps are just simple concepts that just play out well. The best maps don't have to be complicated. I don't think. I think CS is a pretty good game for just here's a basic framework. Let the players do the rest.
We'll just look at Mirage or Dust 2, or
or Cash even.
Old Cash.
Yeah, just classic maps.
Yeah. All right. Cheesecake enthusiast. Favorite TV game shows. I don't. off the top of my head,
Was
I
there
mean, I
any when you
guess
were a kid you were a big fan of?
I mean, we watched a lot of shit. Now I can Jeopardy. We watched a lot of Jeopardy.
Okay. It's a good
But,
family show, to be fair.
yeah, exactly. It was like something we could all watch, and nobody would get too up in arms about it. But we weren't really into game shows or anything like that. So I mean, like Jeopardy was on, and we watched it, and that's pretty much like the memories that I have. I don't really have anything crazy to go back. Like Wheel of Fortune or any of that. Like we weren't really watching any of that. We were watching Jeopardy for the most part.
Since it was in my era, I was feeling when it first came out, the original Who Wants to Be a Millionaire from the UK was mad exciting when it came out.
Yeah, okay.
Because that was where it was like that. It was like this really famous host. It was like you won $1 million. It took like a bunch of years before someone won. Even when they won, it was implied they maybe cheated. It was like some stuff like, and it was obviously like some of the questions were really hard. So yeah.
That's a good one.
That was a classic one.
The trivia, the trivia, the culture of the trivia kind of questions were just like you really have to go deep.
There's some really hard questions.
Those are great. Yeah. I mean, but I feel like in the UK you actually have a good history of that. In France too, you actually have like a really good history of. In French, they have a lot of those kinds of game shows as well, where it's just like very difficult questions. I was watching a clip of one where like the guy got like 30 questions right, and it was from all sorts of different things, BBC kind of thing. And it feels like
maybe Mastermind. There's a very famous show somewhere called Mastermind where you go and you pick a specialist subject and they just ask you like hard questions about that subject. Yeah.
It
sounds like it might be what you're talking
about. The guy was just rattling off. I mean,
it's really hard. They just keep asking.
Who was the general? And the guy's just going at it. And I'm like, what the fuck? How? It's amazing. Savant level kind of intelligence. It was fascinating to listen to. All right, Breaketh. Since Karrigan is getting up there in age, who should FaZe look at picking up as his replacement? Should they pick up an unknown and have them be apprentice under him? Or would it be better to have Karrigan mentor a current IGL like Cadian, Alexi B, or maybe Maui's personal favorite, Nafani?
I mean, to me, the obvious thing you would do is if you're smart and you're FaZe clan, you want to keep Karrigan on the books. You obviously make him part of the coaching staff. Like what I would do is I would keep Rob on, but have him be sort of like the player, personnel coach or something. And I would take Karrigan as my main head coach, and I would try and pick someone who he thinks has similar qualities to him that he can mold into that role. So you can pick who that be. It might be someone. It might be a famous person like Alexi B, or maybe you let him pick an up and coming guy. And like we said, just work with him on like this is how you call it. Because the reason why I think Karrigan of all people might actually be the best for that role is because he wasn't an IGL for many years. And not only that, as far as I know, he only became an IGL because he was literally influenced by people like God B and thought like, oh, it's a way to do this. So in my opinion, he's an example of someone who's a bit. It's the reason why I give good advice about how to like create a brand, how to talk, how to be confident, because I wasn't any of those things. So since I had to start at zero, I wasn't naturally good. I actually know literally how you learn those things. So I feel like he might be someone who's more in that vein. Whereas there's some people in CS, like it's why the Blade one probably doesn't work. Blade is a genius and was a great IGL from like the early 2000s. Like it's going to be really hard for him to teach someone else to do that, guys. He's essentially just put in 1 billion hours. That's why he mastered it.
Yeah, and there is such a thing as talent as well, where perhaps he's just naturally inclined towards that. I mean, that's the thing is Karrigan used to be a fragger, so I mean, he would know how to. That's probably what makes him.
Well, I've always wondered, haven't you noticed he's the best at making his stars pop off?
Exactly, he knows where to
exactly. He probably understands. There's the same concept in League. I mean, I can use the Dota example, but I'll use the League one. In League, the most famous position people have swapped roles from is AD carry to support the other one in the same lane. Because as you're saying, if you played AD carry your whole life, the one thing you should know is what the AD carry wants you to do for him. And so that's why oftentimes that role swap has led to like the player being even better at that role than they were at their original one, because they sort of understand the vision of the other player.
What I'm stumping on right now, though, is trying to think of, okay, if we weren't to go for one of the mainstream,
who would you take? Just pick a fun one, because obviously you can take anyone here. So who would you take?
That's exactly it. Now, that's what's kind of I'm bumping up against, is trying to think of
I'll give you some names. You pick
talent. Like what could be a new talent that's kind of coming up and that could be making waves right now?
Oh, you don't want it to be an established. It can't be like Cadian.
Well, exactly. No, it wouldn't be a Cadian, right? Because I feel like Cadian is probably going to be far enough along where.
Who's that guy that everyone was raving that Astralis should get, like that, like Sui guy or whatever? Like, isn't he Polish from Mouse or something? Like, wasn't that?
Yeah, Shuhei could be a great one.
Wasn't that where everyone was bigging up? Like, he should have been himself.
He was the one who was doing some damage. Yes. That would be that's dude. You fucking nailed it right there. That would be a terrific one.
I just know that was the one that had the player hype, at least,
because he's still on there, and he was actually getting quite a bit out of it. I mean, he was also responsible in part.
He was on the Mouse Next one as well,
Academy
right?
Success in the We Play leagues, in the Week Play Academy leagues. So he would actually be a fucking mega one. That is a really good pick.
Because obviously the problem aside from that is like, by definition, IGL is the role that doesn't have a lot of newcomers, Semmler, because it's all the old fucking legendary players who are like 20 years in the game and 10 years at Plo and all that shit.
Yeah, it is very tough to say like who you would want in that sort of scenario. It's a shame that he's kind of stuck out in the boonies. You would want him to get another crack at it too, but I guess he has to go through the hell that is online qualifiers every chance. So maybe we'll get to see him again. Okay, we'll leave it at that. Darius, do you have any movie, song, or book from a genre you usually despise?
Oh, definitely. Like, I don't know about you, Semmler, but I actually do believe there isn't a single genre or subgenre in art that I think has no value at all. Like, I'd say that in the context that there's some degenerate stuff I would immediately dismiss, no matter how good the artistic value is. But I mean, as in, because what made me realize this, actually, just as a quick aside, is actually the music of Tupac in the 90s. Because when I was a boy, I remember thinking, and look, I know in the modern day, this actually won't be able to be relatable at all to modern day Zoomers in the Anglosphere. Because in the Anglosphere, you are bombarded with rap music. But when I was a boy, rap music was very much not a massive part of mainstream culture. And because it was all builders, like they're all fucking killing people and selling drugs, it was actually still considered like pretty taboo. And so when I was growing up, I remember thinking like, it's not really my type of music, is it? I can't relate to any of the things these people are talking about. I don't hit women and fucking sell drugs and kill people. In fact, that's not even vaguely the world I live in. But when I listen to the music of Tupac, so people don't know, as a rapper, he's not some like phenomenal rapper. He doesn't have like amazing flow, but he was just a very like insightful writer. And he was someone who, even though he was a gangster rapper, actually dared to talk about a lot of topics people wouldn't. Like, he was like a very open person in terms of like how he thought about his relationship with women and stuff. So all I'll say is when I just heard like the content of his music, I was like, holy shit, like this isn't at all what I see like in like the simple rapping of like, you would just kill people and sell drugs. Like, this is like, there's water, this is depth. And the epiphany I had was this, Semmler. What I realized was, if someone was a musical genius and they were born in like 17th century Germany, well, it wouldn't even be Germany, it'd be like whatever fucking Prussia or whatever the fuck it was called back then, or some papal state, they would obviously have started doing music on like a harpsichord, or they do fucking classical music. So what I realized is, if you were just someone who was black and happened to be a musical genius, you'd be Tupac or you'd be Kanye. So essentially what it made me realize was, it's not about the genre. In every genre, there's going to be some genius musical figure or artistic figure. So as a result, like, I'm not a huge fan of country music, but I'll guarantee there's some banger country artists, if I found it, I'd be really into. Someone who had like really great melody or maybe interesting lyrics. Or I think everyone out there are one. So I think I can pick one if I think about it. Do you have an angle that's coming to mind for you? Is there like a genre you always avoid?
The one that I'm always like giving shit to is obviously the manga anime genre.
Oh, of course.
But I mean, I've gone out of my way to go ahead and pick up a couple. I've got all of Berserk and Akira on my shelf. So it's like, I do have very specific ones that I enjoy a lot and that I've picked up. I would also, I mean, but it's like the mainstream ones, but it's the mainstream ones, but it's the ones that we had access to as kids, you know, like Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. The fucking A. I mean, I know all of those books cover to cover by heart, because France had an early manga. France had an early manga exposure. Like, I guess it just worked there because in French culture, you already had comic books, and so you had, you know, Lucky Luke and Tintin and all of that stuff. And so I think the culture just kind of worked where they're like, well, try out this Japanese stuff, we'll translate it over. And so we had early access to Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, and that was just straight fire through and through. So yeah, there's a couple that I really enjoy, but like today I just utterly despise the whole thing. I mean, so it's like I'm very much locked in time where it's like I have those. Yes, they give me everything that I need out of that genre, and then I am not inclined in the least to even look at the genre at all anymore. So maybe I'm missing out. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing out on something there, but I'm not particularly interested at all in looking deeper now. If anything, I mean, I'm going to keep going back to the classics of the French stuff and just keep picking up all of that. Looking like. You have to preserve them as well, especially with this whole Roald Dahl thing that's going on, where it's, you know, it's really coming to light just how much they're editing in terms of the old writing, especially in children's books, where they're, you know, like, oh, Augustus Gloop isn't fat anymore, he's enormous. It's like, okay, they're going back and re-editing everything, and so, you know, I've already started that process where I pretty much just buy all of my books hardcover now and just have them on my shelf, so that, okay, there, it's done. It's like, you know, try and get as close to first generation as you can, and then have it on the shelf and preserve it. And now I'm thinking of even doing that with like French comics, because some of those are pretty, some of those they were drawn and written in a different time, and so some of them I'm thinking, okay, I may
always
need to
tell
actually
people,
pick these
Semmler,
up before they just disappear because
the reason no one's done a good job selling European comics is they always forget to say this one detail, right? I don't know if you know this, but the reason why American comics are by definition infantile isn't just the superhero angle. It's that there was a thing called the Comics Code, which all DC and Marvel adhered to for like 50 years. And that code said you couldn't depict violence, sexual content, like anything like against society, political stuff, right? Well, if people don't know, the whole thing about European comics is they didn't have anything like that. It's genuinely a blank canvas and you can create anything your mind wants. So if you do a Western story like Blueberry with Morbius or whatever, it isn't just going to be a Western, guys. It's going to have like people getting shot in the face and fucking crazy, like outrage, like maybe someone getting scalped or something. So like it's way more like avant-garde art, basically, European comics. It's not like you think of an Americans, it's just a superhero. It's all fucking cheesy. It's not like that at all. So I always feel like that's the thing that people are missing. It's not very childish. It's quite like adult material, not in the sexual one entirely.
No, that's
it's
the
just
thing.
adult material. Yes,
But then they also have adult material in the sexual side as well, where it's just like les bidochons and stuff like that that are just mega. They're comics that are written for adults and they deal with adult topics. It's not something that it's like my dad had them on the very top shelf, where it's like you just couldn't reach them, and there you go, like that's where they lived, and you knew that you weren't allowed to touch those comics because those were his comics, right? That is very much in a part of French culture. So it's just interesting to pay attention to and to look into now.
I'll just give you one, which is like, in general, I'm really not a fan of metal music largely, mainly because I actually just thought, I told you I hate it when it's like, I hate that style of singing. I think it's really unappealing. I also think a lot of metal music, because it's like a sort of punk ethos of like fuck normal standards. It's when they do stuff like, when they make the music like way too complicated and it's too fast and it's too wanky with like a million strings on the guitar. I hate shit like that in general. I just want good music. So one thing I'll say though is within the genre of metal though, there is one group I think is amazing, which is a Norwegian group called Ulva, who began as like a black metal group, but then literally just realized eventually like we're essentially just artists though, and started doing albums where they did an album of like jazz and they did one that's like ambient music. Oh, they've done some amazing stuff like drone music. They've done all these different genres. And like, I would just say skip all the early ones that are just the metal. That's the worst stuff they did. The stuff they did from the 2000s on in all these different genres is incredible, mate. They did one where they took like William Blake's like Marriage of Heaven and Hell, like the art of that, and made a concept album opera to that, where it's like music where they're like, it's fucking incredible stuff, mate. It's really interesting avant-garde art, basically.
What's the name again?
Ulver, Ulver.
Dude, all right, we're gonna have to check that out. That sounds amazing. I feel like we could keep going around in circles on this one, but like
that's a good one.
The vibe that I've got is that punk rock was never actually punk, and that metal was the real punk all along.
Seems like it, yeah.
I mean, it seems the more
the problem with punk rock is there's a lot of pauses, isn't it?
Real rebels is in metal, and punk, a bunch of fucking rich kids wanking each other off. Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
Or just skater kids being obnoxious or whatever, just be like, I can't even play my instrument. Well, get the fuck out then.
Yeah, but that's it exactly. It was just, and this is coming from somebody who was very much involved in punk back when I was growing up. Like buddies were punk, went to punk shows all the time. I was punk. And now looking back, I'm like, man, there isn't a whole lot of depth here. Whereas now that the more I look into metal, the more I'm just like, fucking hey, this is where there's a lot of good shit.
It's like, that Zoomer meme they all make, like, lol, Rage Against the Machine, more like Rage with the Machine. Like, they were like that from day one. You are aware from day one they were on an enormous label on MTV, having giant concerts and winning awards in the music industry. Like, they were at no point in time for 1 second rebels. The problem is this, if you don't know, without being too based, their whole shift was left wing. So what happened was the left wing media just went, yeah, this is brilliant. Wow, look at all these rebels. Because all they were talking about was like, what about like right wing death squads in Nicaragua and stuff like. So it was just grist for the media mill. Like the actual sad thing about them is it's just that we didn't see the totality of them. If we could have seen them through the lens we see them now, when they began, they were always just a fucking sellout act like that. That's just marketing, the idea they're like against the machine or whatever the fuck it is. Like, come on, man.
It was some of the best marketing when it comes to a name.
Sure.
There you go.
Oh, it was a banger fucking theme. Yeah, of course.
All right, Hodor. For Thorin, I didn't know until recently rewatching that you were involved in the making of the top 50 players in CS history videos on YouTube. Would you ever consider reviewing those videos today and potentially adding additional insight? I wasn't around for the CS 1.6 years, but they've always interested me.
The problem with that is he's not technically correct. Like, I was involved, but I didn't do it. What happened was there was a guy who used to be like a low pro level player who played for, I think, the team Dead Zone, a Canadian team in like the 2000s in CS 1.6. And he was just a super fan of CS, like I am, like followed the game for years and years. And what happened was when I used to work with the ESEA community, he was one of the people in that community. And he just decided towards the end of 1.6 that he was going to make a list like this, like top 50 players ever. So what happened was he made a list and then he ran the names by me and asked what I thought, like, what do you think of this guy? Should this guy be on there? Now, look, I actually disagreed with a lot of the picks. I do think it was a well done thing. Like, he had a philosophy and he expanded on it, etc. But for example, if people ever go and look at that list, the ones that to me don't work is a lot of 1.6 thinking was people doing stuff like, if you're in a team that wins everything, all 5 players become the all-time great players and get the cat. So unfortunately, the reason his list's a bit wonky, in my opinion, is you have players who were sort of like the 4th best on a championship team, but all the championships mean he has them top 50. Whereas, like, if you know me, you could be like Kogu from Brazil and win one massive tournament ever. Like, you could still be one of the greatest players ever. Like, individually, you were a god. So that's the main area I would disagree with. All I'll say is, like, I probably will do like one of these lists myself, because I know I did like a top 10 CS 1.6 players ever, but I should do like a bigger list, because the top 10's like just essentially what order you have the big names in. Doing a top 50 is fun, because once you get to like beyond 20, you're going to have all these fringe cases, right? Like, do you take like the best Korean player, whether they accomplished anything as a team or not? You know, there's all those fringe cases. So I'll probably do something like that one day.
Okay, there we go. Velovern. For both Semmler and Thorin, I remember hearing both of you enjoy listening to classical music from time to time. What type of classical music are your go-to to listen, or do you have a favorite composer? For me, my go-to is violin concertos by Mendelssohn or Tchaikovsky. The Bach violin concertos I'm a big fan of. I have a compilation of those that I like to listen to. Otherwise, piano, it's the mainstream, but they're just so good. Beethoven, Chopin, I mean, they're just so hard to beat. Tchaikovsky is great too. I mean, the thing is that I kind of dabble here and there, wherever the mood, but Bach is epic, and Bach's Mass in particular, it's just
as in like the religious epic. Mass.
Yeah, it's just mega epic. So there's some really good stuff out there. But I guess I have to say, I mean, I've mentioned Bach a few times now, so yeah, big fan of Bach.
I just don't really know a lot of
violins.
I just don't really know the classical, as in like the old school stuff. So I only really know like modern day people who are in the same genre. So like Arvo Part and Henrik Gorecki and Philip Glass and people like, I know some of their albums that were good, but I'm not particularly into this genre. I definitely don't know that much about the old school people, even though I will say, if you ever want like value for money and you ever see one of those sets where it's like the best of Beethoven and Mozart, it's like, just buy it. It'll be worth it. Like the best CD, the best of Beethoven's you're going to know like half of it, even without knowing the names. It's all just going to be bangers.
That's the thing. That's the reason why they're so good. Why they transcend time. It's just because they are so good. I just listen, and I know it's not Mozart all the way. I know that he only partially wrote it, but I just listened to Mozart's Requiem again from start to finish the other day, and it's just this transcendent experience where you're just sitting there going, "Holy shit!" But again, he only wrote parts of it, and so he gets all the credit for Lacrimosa and everything. But man, again, for shame that I don't know the guy's name who helped him do it. I should know the top of him off the top of my head. But there you go. Like the classics transcend time because they are just that good. And so there's no shame in saying like, well, I'm a Mozart fan. Well, it's like, okay, good. Yeah, you're that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. Don't worry. All right. Santiago La Farga. If you had a son and had to raise him, how would you do it, generally speaking? And how would you raise him differently from the way society commonly does it these days?
I mean, obviously, this is pure speculation because we don't have sons and we would just be making up out of our ass. So we can, we can have a go. We can do what we can.
Until the rubber meets the road. I mean.
By the way, I would say the more abstract point, I would say it just goes quite simply like this. That's what would be beautiful about it, is I would have to learn myself what I would need to change to be the person that could raise the child I would want to raise. Because one thing I've noticed, whether it's having a dog or it's fucking, in general, having a relationship, is this is how you know in the modern day people have been fucked by thinking that they're a consumer and everything should be enjoyable and fun all the time. part of what makes it brilliant to have relationships is that when you have responsibilities, that also means things like you have to level your own shit up to meet them. Otherwise, you won't meet the responsibility, like you'll fail. So what I actually find a blessing is like, if you want to learn things like how to be responsible, how to have discipline, how not to overreact, how to know when to be generous without being taken advantage of. These are all things that you, in theory, you're going to have to learn on the fly when you are a parent, a father, a husband, whatever. So I would just view it as like, I would learn it as I go, essentially. That would be my vision.
The
I don't think I have
fascinating
a
thing with
set
that, though,
vision in
is
mind.
it kind of, when you're talking about that sort of thing, it brings me back to the jukebox, in that you would have had a structure of men to teach you how to be a man so that then you could transmit that knowledge down.
Of course, yeah.
Right? Whereas now, if you're atomized completely, you
No,
only
it's going
have
to be
your
way
dad.
harder. Yes.
And in most, in a lot of cases these days, you may not even have your dad to
Yep.
show you the way. And so who is your male role model? Who are you getting this kind of information from on how to raise a son? Like what, are you going back in time in history trying to find a thread? Are you trying to look to today's moral role models? Because good luck there. What the media tells you that a man should behave like, because every father on a sitcom now is a moron, and so you're not allowed to have good male role models on popular shows anymore, because then that defeats the purpose of the show. So you really are screwed in that sense. But again, yeah, it's like you say, neither of us has got a son. Neither of us has got that firsthand experience. So this really would just be pure speculation. I mean, I guess the one thing that I was thinking about recently is just that you would try to do the best you could to make sure that you're not giving your son over to your enemies to raise, and then wondering why he hates your guts. 10 years later, it's like, maybe I should have paid closer attention. Maybe I shouldn't have let only my enemies raise my children. So that would probably be.
I will give one piece of practical advice that I actually think I would almost certainly try and apply, though, because one area that you'll notice there's this famous difference in how fathers specifically treat children that seems to have an impact, right? It goes one of two ways. Either they think to themselves like, I had a hard life, so I want my kids to have none of the problems I did, and they give them everything, and that ruins you in one way, right? But there's the other way they ruin you. So the story when it's some Michael Jackson character, it's like, oh, it's the other way around. Like, he gave us no affection, and that made me fight for the affection, so I became exceptional. And it's like, but you also are fucked up and ruined. So either extreme ruins you. Well, I remember hearing it was like a Jordan Peterson lecture where he mentioned a guy, I think he's from I think he's Polish or Czech. It was a guy called Jak Pancep, and he was a scientist that did studies with rats, and he found that when rats would fight with each other just for fun, like two male rats,
right?
That, because obviously they're not all identical sized. If one of the rats is bigger than the other one, and technically could just win all the time when wrestling, because wrestling is by definition a sport where it's about weight. It's not fucking jiu-jitsu. Like, if you're just stronger than the guy, you hold him down. What he found was, if the big rat just wins all the time, I mean, the stat was, if he wins more than something like 70% of the time, the small rat just eventually says, like, I'm not playing anymore. Like, I just lose every time. So the premise goes, you don't want to make it like that, where you don't let them win ever. You also don't want to let them win all the time, or they're not learning anything. What you want is, you want them to have a measured experience of losing most of the time, so they only have to level up and keep trying, but getting a few wins every now and then. And I would say in life in general, that feels like what you want, because it's the same if you work out at the gym. The secret at the gym isn't do the maximum possible you can lift. It's do progressive overload. So find your level now, gradually increase it, meet that level, gradually increase. If you do it like that, you can have a lifelong, you'll just be healthy. You won't even have to do the set amount of exercise. You'll just be healthy in your life. So I would say it sounds like, as someone who's never done it, there's a similar concept to parenting where you want challenging, but you want to support at the same time. So it is a balance, but that's the reason I bring up that example, because I almost think you could almost even formalize it. It's just no one's thought to do it. They just do one of the other extremes. They either think you give them everything, or you give them nothing. It's clearly some interesting balance, though, isn't it?
One just quick aside. I just finished, reading Gates of Fire by Pressfield on the Spartans, right, and the Battle of Thermopylae, but also it talks about Spartan culture, and obviously, he's putting this together from all sorts.
The ultimate harsh culture, yeah.
Sure. Take that with a grain of salt, of course. But one part that he was talking about that I always found interesting throughout is that the young men would have mentors, and so not only would they have a father with whom obviously they have their relationship, but for the conversations that you would feel too ashamed to have with your father, or to other kind of upbringing, or just having another male role model, you would each have a mentor that was assigned to you, or that your father chose, a close friend of his or something. Basically, like there were multiple layers to the support structure for all of the boys growing up, so that you always had at least somewhere to get help from, and somewhere to get guidance from, and somewhere to show you how to behave. And that to me sounded really fascinating. Once again, coming back to just how atomized we are today. How would you go about it? Is it even possible to bring that back today? How would you even go about it if you wanted to, right? And hypothetical, like, okay, I want to do this. How would you do it? It's an interesting point, but I highly recommend that book if you're looking for an interesting book. Gates of Fire by Pressfield was very entertaining. Again, take it with a grain of salt in terms of the historicity, but worth it. All right, 2 more questions. ASW Gaming, I know Thorin loves Dune. Have you read Book of the New Sun by Gene Wolfe?
I haven't, but I will say what I tend to do with recommendations is either I read the synopsis and it captures me, like that's why I read like Hyperion and stuff, or I wait until enough people who I know have good taste recommend something. And what I will say is a lot of the people in my circle who actually do like some of the books I like, everyone recommends that guy Gene Wolfe. They say that the Book of the New Sun series is apparently amazing. So
really,
it's on my list for sure. I've never read it at all though.
I'm not even going to waste time because I got a lot of travel ahead of me. So
it's one where they say if you like really good fiction like that you'll just be into it. Like apparently it has some really, but I intentionally haven't looked it up so I don't spoil it or whatever. But it's on my list, put it away. I will get to it.
The New Sun, or Book of the New Sun. Okay, I'm going to check that out because I got some traveling coming up, and that's the best time to do reading, right? So, all right, sweet. Thank you. Thanks for that recommendation. Do you think the pro players will, or this is from Wes, do you think the pro players will fix the CSPPA, or if not, which incentives would it take for them to get it together?
The problem I have is it'll always go back to that Chris J boycott of the Blast game. That was the only time they ever took actual action which denied their employers their work. And it was over not only a petty thing, but they've expressly said they won't do it on the big topics. I mean, Chris J said it the best. I know he's not involved anymore, but famously when Richard said, why didn't you do anything about ESL taking the EPL slots away from those American teams? His gist was essentially, what would be the point? It wouldn't change anything. But that's not how a union operates. Like you don't do it because you know you're going to succeed. You do it because it's unacceptable circumstances. We have to make a stand. So to me, the real issue is I don't think the will even exists within players to actually stand up for the important things. I think it's only rich players getting mad over minor things that they can complain about and have a tantrum. And if you do it this way, you can even do it publicly. Like to me, the whole thing's just, it's fugazi as fuck, mate. I don't even think there is a real player union in the sense that fans do,
I'd say if it is, it's going to come in a long time when players somehow are formed into, or somehow the system has grown up. It's not going to be this generation. It may not even be the next generation of players. It may be generations down the line if this thing continues, where they'll try and figure it out. The thing is though with CSPPA and all that is that it's not in the team owners' like the incentives are all wrong. It's not in the team owners' interest to have the players unionizing, and it's not in the tournament organizers' interest to have the players unionizing. The only people who could care about this would be the developers, i.e. Valve or something, where for them they just want Valve. As far as Valve are concerned, they would get rid of all the middlemen and just directly deal with the players. That's how they do it in Dota. So I mean,
that's why here's what's hilarious. Yeah. Think of the two groups of people who have pushed to make a player union who aren't Richard Lewis. They are Nicola Nyholm, a literal evil team owner, robber baron, industrialist cunt, who is exactly the opposite. Literally the person that a union would be designed to fight, even in a fucking Hollywood movie. So he wants to set one up. Now, why would he want to set up his own player union? Use your fucking brain. And then the other one is people like Sir Scoots used to also literally be in that Nyholm position of companies, made millions off the backs of players in the industry, or people like ESL who were the tournament organizer. Again, the people who the union would directly battle. The point there, by the way, guys, is that's just fucking classic politics. That is Lenin. If there's going to be an opposition, we should control it. Like that. Yes. There's a reason why Richard is the. If you don't know, there's another example of where if a fan goes, "What's Richard Lewis ever done?" You're just telling on yourself. You know nothing about esports. Richard Lewis almost set up a real player union that would have been properly out externally funded and would not have had any of these dodgy people at the levers of control. He almost did it. As far as I know, by the way, I'll give you the secret source. It's obvious now. The only reason I think they even did CSPPA is because those groups of that Mads Olin guy came from the sports world where they acted as disruptive figures within like sports negotiations.
Yes,
and it looks like their side business was going to be that they'd be an agency on the side and they'd help you negotiate your deals and push back and use the fucking union as sort of like a political cudgel, as it were. So to me, the problem is just that none of these people seem like it's someone in good faith setting up a union to help players. It sounds like someone who has their own ulterior motive used this as like a way to get other ends of theirs accomplished and seemed like I'm going to help players as well. Well, anytime someone who no only cares about money goes, I'm trying to help people. It's like, yeah, of course you are, bro. Of course you are.
There's always going to be some bias. It's kind of like a much smaller scale, but what we try to do with Room on Fire, man, it was so difficult to balance everything, to get everybody on the same page. I can only imagine if you have 100 players who are all making, mountains of cash, how are they going to balance it out? This can only come from the players, but because in order for a union to work, you need players with more be willing to give up for players who have less. That is a very challenging thing to do. A very challenging thing to do, which makes me skeptical as to why this would happen at all. But maybe we'll talk about this more in the future. As far as tonight is concerned, that's it for a show. Duncan, how you doing, dude? Good?
Yeah.
Made it. All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for your support. Lots of questions tonight. Really awesome to see. We're not sure if there's going to be a show next week. We might be postponing 1 week. So obviously follow up on the social media. If you're not in the Discord, hop in the Discord. If you want to support the show and other shows on the network, on the Last Free Nation network, and ask questions like these, be sure to subscribe in the Discord. It's the best way to support us right now. We're also doing subscriptions on Twitch. If you don't want to subscribe to Discord, there's Twitch and other means. Links with all the information should be below in the description. And so thank you very much again if you made it this far. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment, and we'll see you all next time.
Chris is not still in the picture. Oh, I'm still very much in the round. Oh, Chris, he's found 3. It's down to a 2-on-2. Chris, can he close this with an ace? Oh my God!
Gives him a chance at least, and this CZ kill could be everything. Finally, Zeus, he does something!
Looking for a second, he connects in. Oh, and he